Guys suck dick. Thank you for confirming it. Idiots. Oh, he's stacked! Oh! Go get it. The body's in the meadow over there towards the tower. Yeah, yeah. See it? Fucking scrub ass bitches. Go get the body. Yeah, yeah, get that body. Here he comes. Here he comes, guys. Oh no, you're oh no, you're Why can't I get a hammer up top? Because I had to move everything. It's so annoying. I'm just gonna go watch what's happening. I set off a war in my neighborhood, and all I stand to do is lose guns. Listening to them fail is hilarious. Over and over and over again, these guys suck so much dick. It's hilarious. They're like the worst. They're like the worst players on like any game. I think even normal people would be doing better than these idiots. Their low IQ is actually really affecting them. What's up, buddy? Yeah. What's up, buddy? How you doing? Hey, good fights today, huh? I appreciate the help. You know, on streamer mode, your name comes up as Latina. Sup, Latina? I'm gonna go on about my business here. Yeah, I know. Isn't it a piece of crap base? There's not even like any like fucking pancake or honeycomb or anything. There's nothing in here except for like I think there's like a python, 4 saps, and 2 Tommies. I think 2 boxes. You guys lick windows a lot, or? Well, I hope you're having a good rust day. I hope you get a lot of kills out there.
Goes to
Lainey Wilson. That was a mic drop.
I just want to take your point there, because even if all of that is true, right, and Trump says himself that this trial was rigged, and yet you still had a jury of his peers, 12 Americans, who, 2 of them who are lawyers, who know the law really well, who found him guilty on all counts.
Oh, is something happening? You know, all my Rust life, idiots have congregated outside my base, and then a whole bunch of other idiots come and shoot them. All my life that I've done this, 3.5 years or something, idiots congregate outside my base, and then other idiots shoot them. And I think it's like nature or God's way of sussing out idiots, because they just sit there and waste many minutes and many hours of their time getting nothing but killed and lost, and just more lost in the sauce, you know? You guys are used to it, I guess. I'm not really used to it. You guys should probably actually do something. Maybe like go kill those guys over there that are firing their weapons and doing stuff. As opposed to this guy in here who's just trolling you for an audience for a living. I mean, I'll just say it.
You square the two.
Well, for one, just because somebody has a pulse doesn't mean that they are a peer of President Trump. You are in one of the most Democrat bluest counties in the entire country. The jury instructions were leading this jury to convict. It was teeing up a conviction. And was ruling, by the way, there was a lot of back and forth when deciding on the jury instructions, and the prosecution makes, their case, the defense has their argument, and then the decision was made on what the jury instruction should be, and then time after.
Oh yeah, do you guys have a fight, or is something happening in your boring lives? Should I pay attention, or? Yeah, hey, there's a naked over there. Do you see him? Are you dumb, or? Go kill that naked. Oh, oh. Oh, oh. Go get him, see? Now I'm bossing you around. Get to work, slaves. Kill the naked, slaves. Kill the naked, you straight bitch-made slaves. Oh no, that's far too much stuff. Yeah, I definitely need to, like, not open that.
You know, one time after another, Juan Merchan is deciding on particular jury instructions that lead the jury to convict, again, without...
The hell was that sound? The hell's going on over there? What the fuck is it? Fuck is that? What the fuck is that sound? What? Fuck is that? Bitch. Go out there and get that. Oh, you get pwned as usual, like everybody else who sees you. Like everybody else who sees you, I killed you. Big surprise. Look at you suck dick all day right in front of everybody, live, real time. Hey, thank you, whoever you are. It's fun to spin up the Rust people. I don't care about that, really. Oh no, is that my gun? No, oh yeah. Stand up, stand up, stand up. All my Rust life, cocksuckers like you sitting outside my door. Not the guys who are killing them. You guys are cool. All these idiots who sit there for hours on the same person, looking like the Rust losers that they actually are, for hours on the same person, as they get shot at and suck dick all day. I put this where I can't reach. It's annoying. Thank you. I still have lost nothing. What? It's so boring when these people are around. Their lives are so shitty and doldrum. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's true. Why did you give me the wrong bed again? Yes, that bed. As they build. Ooh, ooh. Did you steal my gun, damn it? There's nothing in there. Like there's like a python. I'll make a python, I guess, or whatever, to show that I don't care. It's fun to get free entertainment. Let's learn about how the president lost the, lost the 34 felonies and went to jail.
Underlying charges and without requiring unanimity.
Lee Zeldin, our thanks to you for your time and insight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And now we're joined by ABC News investigative reporter Olivia Rubin. Olivia, of course, you have covered this trial from the beginning and were there in the courthouse today for the end. Just paint a picture for us. Give us the color in that moment as the verdict was read.
Well, it was Donald Trump, as we saw him so frequently during this trial, Lindsay, essentially motionless, reactionless, at certain points looking down at the floor as this 12 group of New Yorkers delivered his fate to him late afternoon. But what was so stunning sort of about that reaction is what Donald Trump was projecting just moments before. He had been called into the room initially, told that he was going home. Mershon, just after 4 o'clock, said that he would be dismissing the jury at 4:30 and sending them on their way. And Donald Trump appeared just giddy at the defense table. He was talking to Todd Blanche, his attorney, whispering in each other's ears, laughing.
Whispering in each other's ears about manly man things. MP5. You fucking idiots. I'm just gonna plug this fucking gap while they keep harassing me at night. It's so stupid. No losses, no guns, lots of kills, lots of loot. I win! Yeah! I win! No losses of guns. I got me like 7 kills. I got a whole inventory of loot. I fucking win! I win! I win! I win! I win! So here we go. Just gonna like go on about my business here. I just win! I 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 win, I win, I win, I win, I win, I win, I win. I win, I win, I win against all these people. I'm better, I'm better, I'm better than them as a solo, than their stupid cocksucking fucking idiot fucking lives. I'm better than them, better than them. I win, I declare myself the winner of this war. I've lost nothing. Nothing. I've lost 42 rounds and I got 7 kills and 2 hours of entertainment. And now I shall watch it all through the window as I move on with my life because I'm better than everybody else. So let's go learn about how Trump's going to jail. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hear it in that courtroom, but then, of course, Mershon coming back moments later and saying there was a verdict and it was an instant energy shift.
Guilty president going to jail. Guilty criminal going to jail.
Lindsay, Donald Trump, for most of the part from there on, just sat, again, motionless at the defense table as he heard his verdict, which was really, you know, remarkable here.
Well, if you didn't rip off people for $165 million in back taxes, how much of that do you owe me personally? I think if every Trump supporter really thought about how Trump actually owes that Trump supporter something like $36,000 in stolen tax money, I think the Trump supporters wouldn't be Trump supporters anymore. And I say this from a place of reality because I fucks with reality. Remember, reality is he jacked $165 million from the U.S. How many people are in the U.S.? 700 million, right? Motherfucker, he done jacked like $37,000 from every single one of us. And any Trump supporter who backs him, I mean, you might as well just hand over your money. Just give him your money, you know?
Courtroom sort of getting up, looking down at the floor, watching the jury leave, adjusting his jacket, taking a look at the room. And
it's all a scam. It's all a trial.
How he went from that courtroom after 7 weeks in there.
What else struck you as the verdict was being read?
Well, that this country has descended into tribalism. We hate both of our leaders, and we don't really have anybody hopeful. She doesn't know how to answer this. She's going to try. There's the big O face.
Well, how quickly, quite frankly, the jury came to this verdict. It took them just 10 hours to get to that point. They had reviewed some of the most key testimony, and many people thought that it might take a lot longer. They were, you know, sort of complex charges when you looked at the way that this case was brought. And I think, you know, your previous guest, a supporter of Donald Trump, was hinting at this, talking about how that there were underlying charges that they needed to find Trump committed in order to make this a felony, but it was sort of misinterpreted the way he said it, that it was some ambiguous, you know, false way of convicting Trump. He couldn't believe that Mershon told them they didn't have to agree. But that, Lindsay, it's important for our viewers to know, is the law in this case. There was nothing inaccurate about the way that Mershon charged that part of the law.
You got to remember, every single time, this is why I find fault with people who don't really understand how the system works, right? Every single time they try to bring something to court, if that thing is not true, they lose their career. And I mean, that's true for lawyers, that's true for judges, that's true for everybody. Every time they say something that isn't true, they can lose their careers. So very seldom do you actually see a lawyer willing to do that. Not even like Johnny Cochran was a liar. Not really.
That they could choose from. They didn't all have to agree.
Like he was a bad lawyer, but he wasn't a liar.
On what they were, and he wasn't charged with that in order to make it a felony.
He was an obfuscator, but he wasn't a liar. Very seldom are they telling you something that's full-blown untrue, because then they can be proven in court like that they're guilty of perjury, and then they lose their career. So this is why we respect our lawyers and our professional people. They run this tight wire fucking rope where if they say the wrong thing or they do the wrong thing, they are just canceled, because the public has an interest that must be, sacrosanct, must be observed,
Given that it was a complex way of charging this case, and
Guilty, 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 guilty.
Donald Trump's attorneys had tried to poke holes in that wherever they could.
I mean, it's an image designed to try and make it seem a lot more worse than it is.
The jury needing only 10 hours, Lindsay, to parse through 7 weeks of a trial.
Olivia Rubin, so appreciate your coverage from the very beginning.
Me too. Killing it, Olivia Rubin. Thank you for the excellent content for my stream, and whoever this lady is.
Thank you.
Who is this?
For more now, we're joined by Barbara Comstock, ABC News.
I'm sure I'm supposed to know, but I don't follow the news.
Political contributor.
Thank you, ABC. I've liked and subbed to your channel. Thank you for the excellent content for my stream. I've liked and sub.
And former Congresswoman from Virginia.
Former Congresswoman from Virginia.
Ms. Comstock, I just want to, I know
Comstock. Now, Comstock is an interesting name.
you wanted to respond to
We're listening to a Comstock, are we?
what our earlier guest right before Olivia, Lee Zeldin, was saying, so I'm just going to give you the floor.
I'm just going to give you the floor.
Sure. I was just going to say, you've had Donald Trump first attack our election system.
Oh, listen to that voice. It's either throat cancer, cigarettes, opioid abuse, whiskey, or she inhaled fire.
We've had hundreds of convictions from his supporters because of that. You've also had...
Nope, it's her natural voice. She's just reedy.
Many of his supporters, like, his former campaign manager, go to jail. His lawyers and other people go to jail. And, now you have him have these 34 felony convictions tonight. Now, of course, he can appeal that conviction, and that is his right. But for him to be attacking the judicial system is very sad. And to see, the party of law and order attack the very system and attack the jurors is really sad, too. So, they can go and they can appeal the case, but to attack the jurors and to attack our, legal system after they've been attacking the election system for 4 years is just really out of line. And I hope Republicans will do a lot better than what we've seen over the past 4 years.
What are you hearing from your Republican colleagues tonight?
Well, unfortunately, we are hearing a lot of that from Donald Trump, and we've got to do better than that, because we need to stand up for the rule of law. A jury considered this, and the proper response, if you don't like what a jury has done, is to appeal the case, to deal with it within the legal system. And that's not Donald Trump throughout, with all of these legal cases, he's not only now a convicted felon, he also was adjudicated, in a civil case. They found him liable in a civil case of, sexual assault. And you've also had in another civil case, of business fraud. So, these are serious cases that people have taken into the legal system, and he has been found, liable and now guilty. When he didn't like how his the election turned out, he went to court in 60 cases and he lost all of them. Yet he still goes out there and his supporters talk about, a rigged election. And he still talks about that in every rally he has. And he is undermining our election system. Now he's trying to undermine the legal system. And this just needs to stop. This is just not the way, we operate.
It is not.
In a democratic
No, it is not.
system. And Republicans shouldn't stand for this. And, we just can't, this is not the way we should be conducting our elections or, how we should be dealing with our court system.
Well, you say Republicans shouldn't stand for it. So what should Republicans do? I mean, at this point, he is the
Well, if you want to
presumptive
support
nominee.
Republicans, you should be supporting Republicans who support the legal system. And I think the reason why this court case turned out the way it is, I mean, look at the facts in this case. Look at just the common sense things. When you go into a case and when you see somebody's wife doesn't show up and sit with them in a court case, Melania never went in there day after day, week after week.
Well, I mean, he did
His
cheat with a
daughter,
porn
Ivanka,
star.
never showed up. Juries look at things like that. You had a case where many of the same reasons why Michael Cohen was convicted, indicted, and then convicted on many of the same fact patterns by Donald Trump's own Justice Department. It's the same reason why Donald Trump was convicted in this case. Many of the same documents were involved in this case. All of those records where, where they paid Michael Cohen, where Donald Trump took out those records were sent into the White House. He signed off on that. Hope Hicks was a very credible witness, and she didn't go in there and lie. I mean, when she told the truth on the stand and she realized she told the truth, what happened? She started crying because she realized she told the truth and it was damning. So these are the kind of things that jurors see.
Testify,
and,
sister.
this is why his own family, his wife and his daughter, didn't want to be in there.
But when we talk about the Republican Party at large, when we going forward, I mean, he is the presumptive nominee.
Well, he isn't yet. And, I know.
Presumptive.
People want to deny reality. I mean, it's kind of sad. But, the people who decide these elections are really, it comes down to about 6% of people in 6 swing states. And people might want to consider that it is usually those deciding votes are women who are sort of centrist people, and they kind of pay attention in about September and October, and those are the kind of people who probably, if they had known these facts that people learned about now in this jury, the Stormy Daniels case, the payoff, those kind of things, the kind of things that this jury paid attention to. If they had known those things in 2016, I think they might have decided the way this jury did. And those are going to be the 6% of people who are going to decide this election in those 6 swing states.
Barbara Comstock, appreciate you as always.
That was good.
I want to bring in ABC's chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, from the White House. Curious how the White House is reacting tonight.
Well, tonight we still have not heard directly from President Biden yet. He's actually home at his Delaware beach house. This is the 9th anniversary of his son Beau's death, so he's spending some private time with the family. The campaign, however, has spoken out.
Why do you keep bringing that up? Why do you keep bringing up his son's death like it's some kind of fucking press point? Please stop talking about that. I'm sure he wants you to stop talking about it. Please stop talking about that. His son died. Please stop talking about it. It's fucking disgusting and foul that you do talk about it. Please stop talking about that. I can't believe I raided these idiots today. Oh. These idiots keep getting killed. Oh my god, this is so fucking stupid. You guys are so bad. It's like you need to televise it and tell the world. It's kind of sick, you know? Nobody cares how bad you are.
There is no one who is above the law. Look, there is no question that this verdict is a political gift to the president and to Democrats, but his campaign has notably not wanted to celebrate this too much. They don't want to feed into this Trump narrative that this was all somehow a political hit job. That, of course, is something that the president adamantly rejects. Instead, in what was really a kind of muted statement, the campaign says that today's verdict does not change the fact that there is still only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office. They say that is at the ballot box. They say convicted felon or not, Trump will be the Republican nominee for president, Lindsay.
And as he said, the real verdict will be on November 5th. President Biden has taken his fair share of jabs at Trump and his legal woes. How might today's guilty verdict impact Biden's campaign messaging moving forward?
Well, look, I'm told not to expect it to really impact his overall message much at all. They are not going to make this, a centerpiece of the campaign message. They're not going to upend their whole playbook because of this. The message that is coming from the campaign tonight is that they're going to keep on keeping on. That said, obviously they want to take advantage of this. I'm sure the president will, comment on this verdict, and it will be a line that is added to his stump speech for sure. But they say that they are still going to keep making the argument that they've been making, which is essentially that Donald Trump is unfit to be president. And again, underscoring that message that was in that statement that, regardless of what the court does, what happens to Donald Trump, his future is up to voters, not the court, Lindsay.
And Trump is still a major obstacle for Biden, despite his legal challenges. As we've mentioned, the latest ABC News Ipsos poll shows 80% of Trump supporters say that they will continue to support him post-conviction. Polls also show Biden support among certain groups.
Support that criminal. Support him. We would prefer that you support any of the 17 other people that aren't fucking criminals. But you'll support the madman because you're pieces of shit that support a criminal.
Voters.
I'll say it for you nice and loud, You're pieces of shit that support a criminal.
They're waning. Do we expect Biden to start appealing to different groups?
I'll tell you right now, I'm INR. I'm not represented. I don't have anybody to bitch about, So at least you guys have somebody. I hope my reality hits you today.
Different ways.
Yeah, look, I think you definitely will see.
At least you have somebody to look up to,
That. I mean, we've already seen that this week. The campaign now making a big renewed push, this burst of outreach that we've seen to black voters, a critical group that helped deliver him the White House in 2020, a group that he's going to need, and he knows he's going to need if he wants to stay here for a second term. I think they also are well aware, the Biden campaign, that this is going to really shore up Trump's support among his base. They know that he's likely to see record-breaking fundraising coming out of this. It's actually something that the Biden team and the Biden campaign has mentioned in their own fundraising appeals tonight, that they need their supporters to come out as well in response to this verdict. But remember, that is likely to be really Trump's base. What happens in this election really just...
They keep throwing fucking, What are we throwing bombs at? I don't really understand. There's nothing here. You guys are fucking dumb. What are we throwing bombs at? Like, go ahead, motherfucker. Go ahead. It's funny.
This comes down to a very small sliver of the electorate, and those are the ones that we will be watching so closely in the coming days, especially to see how they respond to this verdict.
We certainly will be. Mary Bruce from the White House,
We
our thanks to
certainly will
you.
be.
Florida law allows Donald Trump to vote in the state despite his conviction today, but only
Despite
after
his
he completes his
conviction today.
sentence. Now, we won't know what that sentence is until July 11th, but his eligibility to vote in Florida remains. And it's in Florida that the former president will find himself yet again in less than a month, this time over his classified documents case. Our senior reporter who covers investigations for us, Catherine Falders, joins us once again. Catherine, what exactly will be reviewed during that Florida hearing next month, and what's at stake?
Yeah, so the judge who's overseeing Trump's classified documents case, I should note, appointed by former President Trump when he was president, she has essentially scheduled this series of hearings at the end of June, and they're all over motions to dismiss. Trump has asked her, for various different reasons, to essentially toss out all of those 40 different charges. So the judge has scheduled a series of hearings there, so Trump will show up to those. So in terms of what's at stake, I guess the judge could say, look, the charges are gone. They're evaporated. This won't go to trial at all. It's also worth noting, Lindsay, that because the judge there has scheduled all these hearings that wouldn't normally be scheduled and has set all sorts of various different deadlines, that she has all but ensured that this case won't go to trial before the election. So what Special Counsel Jack Smith will be looking for is there a new trial date set, for example? That trial was supposed to start this month, just 10 days ago. Of course, that never happened. Is there a new trial date? Is there any indication that this will go to trial before November? Those are all of the questions that they hope to have answered.
All right, is there any expectation of resolution of this case, the classified documents case, coming down any time before the election in November?
And it's a good question because it's a complicated case, generally speaking. There's multiple different documents charged here. I think it ultimately depends at the end of the day on what the judge does, and everything and every decision that she's made so far has pointed to the fact that it doesn't seem like there will be a resolution of this case before November. And that's important because if Trump does win the election, what he will do, given that this is a federal case, is he will just essentially direct his attorney general to drop the charges, to throw it out. So if he wins, then this case really isn't going to trial. Of course, if he loses, this could be litigated for years, Lindsay.
Wow. All right. A lot going on. Catherine Falders, our thanks to you. And much more ahead on this historic Trump guilty verdict. Stay with us.
First thing in the morning.
There's a lot going on.
We're still in a flash flood warning.
To catch you up with what happened overnight. Police in riot gear arresting dozens of protesters.
What's happening today? Escalating tensions in the Middle East.
What people are talking about. The migrant crisis.
Fast, straightforward.
With some fun in between.
Check out the Gator on the 17th hole.
The buzzkill in baseball.
First thing in the morning.
America This Morning.
America's #1 early morning news.
On ABC News Live.
What does it take to be the most watched newscast in America?
We are part of it. The house is destroyed, but the flag, there's not a tear in it. Not a tear in it. How important is this label right here, Made in the USA? Look at your smile. You're proud of this.
I love it.
Great work. Hi. Where are you? Where are you? Appreciate you. Thank you, David. Good to meet you. Ismail? David. David. Yes, yes. I'm David Muir.
I know who you are.
You
Watch
do?
you every night.
ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
Whenever, wherever news breaks, it's so important to always remember that lives are changed. Here in London, in Buffalo, Uvalde, Texas, Edinburgh, Scotland. Reporting from Rolling Fork, Mississippi. Ukrainian refugees here in Warsaw. We're heading to a small community outside of Mexico City. Getting you behind the stories as they happen. ABC News Live Prime. We'll take you there.
Stream ABC News Live weeknights wherever you stream your news. Only on ABC News Live.
From the 2024 campaign trail in Erie, Pennsylvania, I'm Rachel Scott. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Tonight, breaking news as we come on the air in the West. Former President Donald Trump found guilty on all counts. Tonight, Donald Trump railing against the verdict.
This was a disgrace.
The jury, 7 men and 5 women, convicting the former president on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records involving the hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. Trump sitting stone-faced in court, shaking his head at times as the jury delivered its verdict. Tonight, when Trump will be sentenced, Dan Abrams is here on what Trump potentially faces.
When Trump will be sentenced.
What could the judge decide when it comes to sentencing? And what does this mean for the race for president? The reaction tonight inside Trump's campaign. Aaron Katersky outside the courthouse. Mary Bruce at the White House. Rachel Scott with reaction on the Hill. The other news this Thursday night, the major turn in the war in Ukraine. The Biden administration giving Ukraine permission now to use American weapons to strike inside parts of Russia. Back in the U.S. in the West tonight, the verdict in the trial of doomsday cult leader Chad Daybell, accused of killing his first wife, then accused of killing his new wife's 2 children. What the jury decided. In New York City's Times Square, the harrowing scene tonight. A man attacked with a machete, an area packed with tourists. Tonight, the CDC confirming a third human case of bird flu here in the U.S., where it's been discovered. And we're tracking severe storms at this hour across multiple states, possible tornadoes and damaging winds, and the threat now stretching east tomorrow.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening as we come on the air in the West tonight. It is great to have you with us here on a Thursday evening for this special edition of World News Tonight. We do begin with the breaking news late today, that stunning moment in American history. The former president, Donald Trump, found guilty on 34 felony counts, the first former president of the United States convicted on criminal charges. The dramatic turn in that courtroom, the judge signaling he would excuse the jurors for the day. Trump was seen joking with his attorney, and then jurors had informed the judge that they, in fact, had reached a verdict, suddenly changing the temperature in that courtroom. The jurors had been deliberating for nearly 10 hours over 2 days. A short time ago, Donald Trump returning to Trump Tower after his conviction, pumping his fist there, waving at the crowd, some cheering, some booing. Earlier, Trump sitting stone-faced as each of the charges was read, one by one, guilty on all 34 counts. The former president shaking his head at times. Trump reacting immediately, coming before cameras, calling the trial rigged and disgraceful, saying the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. A short time later, Trump seen leaving the courthouse, getting into an SUV to drive back to Trump Tower. He will return to that courthouse on July 11th to be sentenced by Judge Juan Merchan, just 4 days before the Republican National Convention. Dan Abrams is standing by here on what will likely come from that judge. What could this sentence look like? Also, our correspondents with reaction, Mary Bruce at the White House, Rachel Scott on Capitol Hill, and reaction tonight at this hour from inside the Trump campaign and the Trump family. But first, our senior investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky, leading us off at the courthouse with these dramatic events late today.
Tonight, former President Donald Trump defiant, arriving home at Trump Tower after being found guilty as charged of all 34 counts of falsifying business records. Trump, now a convicted felon. The historic verdict coming after nearly 10 hours of deliberations. A unanimous jury of 12 New Yorkers made Trump the first president in history to be a convicted criminal. It was an extraordinary turn in the courtroom. Just moments before jurors signaled they had a verdict, Judge Juan Merchan indicated he was going to excuse them for the day. Then a dramatic shift. Trump went from joking with his attorneys to sitting stone-faced, looking down as the jury read the verdict count by count. Prosecutors proving Trump falsified business records to conceal a $130,000 hush payment to porn actress Stormy Daniels to keep her story from voters before the 2016 election. The former president then marching out of the courtroom with his lawyer Todd Blanche by his side.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people.
And outside court,
Guilty!
Cheers could be heard in the crowd as news of Trump's conviction spread. Guilty! Yeah, man! The trial lasting 7 weeks, 22 witnesses taking the stand, including Trump's former fixer and lawyer Michael Cohen, who Trump's defense team called the greatest liar of all time. Cohen late today releasing a statement saying today is an important day for accountability and the rule of law. While it has been a difficult journey for me and my family, the truth always matters. And Stormy Daniels in a statement tonight saying no man is above the law. Trump seen leaving the courtroom late today, getting into his SUV, surrounded by security. Judge Juan Merchan thanked the jury for their handling of a very stressful and difficult task, saying you were excused with the gratitude of the court. Court dismissed. The sentencing date for Donald Trump, July 11th, just 4 days before the Republican National Convention. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who brought the charges against Trump, speaking out late today.
The 12 everyday jurors vowed to make a decision based on the evidence and the law, and the evidence and the law alone. And while this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors, by following the facts and the law and doing so without fear or favor.
All right, so let's get to Aaron Katersky, our chief investigative correspondent, live outside the courthouse again tonight. And Aaron, as we were on the air, you reported on this extraordinary shift in temperature in that courtroom. Judge Juan Merchan at first indicated that jurors would be going home for the day, that this would sort of bleed into a third day of deliberations, which ostensibly would be a good sign for the defense team, a good sign for the former president that they had not come to a unanimous decision here. Suddenly, the judge then getting a note from the jury that they had reached their verdict. Can you describe the shift in tone, the sort of whiplash in that courtroom, and certainly what that must have been like for the defense table?
It was really incredible to watch former President Trump joking with his defense attorney, Todd Blanche. At one point, the defense attorney keeled over and laughing, nearly hitting his head on the defense table. He was laughing so hard. Prosecutors, too, sharing pleasantries, laughing with one another. And when the judge returned to the bench saying we're not going home because the jury has reached a verdict, the mood in the room instantly shifted. Everything became much more rigid. Court officers flowed into the room. There was not a sound from the crowd until the jury walked in and rendered its historic verdict, David.
Aaron Katersky leading us off here tonight. Aaron, our thanks to you as always. I want to bring in our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams. And Dan, you and I were talking 2 days of deliberations. We know the judge instructed this jury to make sure you cannot come up with a verdict here, guilty or not guilty, based solely on the testimony of Michael Cohen. You must look at the totality of the evidence. There must be corroborating evidence. They asked about David Pecker's testimony from the National Enquirer to be reread to them, along with other things. And then they came up with their decision, their unanimous verdict, guilty on all 34 counts at the end of day 2. What did that signal to you?
That they clearly believed the corroborating evidence, right? It can't just be about Michael Cohen. So it means that when they were asking to have that testimony reread of David Pecker, they wanted to be reminded, what exactly did he say? In particular, about how this scheme started. According to the prosecutors, this starts in 2015, not in 2016. That's when the effort begins, in a meeting with David Pecker, Michael Cohen, and Donald Trump, discussing how to find potentially negative stories about Donald Trump and make sure that they don't see the light of day. Prosecutors made it clear in their closing arguments that that was the beginning of this. When they asked to have that read back, that meant at the least they were following the prosecutor's roadmap.
A couple of quick follow-up questions for you. From a legal perspective, being a convicted felon means nothing in the race for president. He moves forward.
Correct. He can run for president, no question, and he can even vote based on the fact that he's a Florida resident, the conviction's in New York. Florida law says they defer back to the state where it happened. That would mean New York, and in New York, the only way you can't vote is if you're actually serving time as a felon.
Last question, and I think about the viewers at home on this one. We know Judge Juan Merchan is planning a sentencing at this point for July 11th, I believe, which is 4 days before the Republican National Convention. I know legal observers, including you, do not believe any time behind bars is likely here. But what is Judge Merchan, do you think? What's the scope of what we could see here?
It could be anything from no time to up to 4 years. And even if it's no time, the question becomes, are there nuances, right? Could it be home confinement? Could there be probation? Could there be community service? So the judge has enormous discretion here, but most people believe because it's a low-level felony, it will be on the very low end of that.
So we will witness as a country here a convicted felon who is sentenced by a judge to, as you say, potentially home confinement or community service or whatever the judge decides. And that person's still running for president.
Right, and remember, that doesn't mean he's actually serving the sentence immediately after the sentencing. They could actually delay that as they appeal it and potentially not have to serve the sentence until after the election.
Okay, Dan Abrams, who's been with us all afternoon. Dan, thank you as always. I want to get right to our investigative reporter, Olivia Rubin, who has been in that courtroom and also in the overflow room. As we know here in New York, no cameras in court, so we have relied on Olivia and our team inside the courthouse every single day, able to watch themselves as this plays out. And Olivia, you were on the air with me earlier. I thought the dynamic that you described of jurors walking into that room was extraordinary. We'll have to find out in the days and weeks to come if this was something they talked about, whether the foreperson or perhaps the two attorneys who were members of that jury said this is the way we're going to present ourselves. But you described them walking in almost single file, bringing no drama, no emotion, their heads down, very little interaction or even looking at the former president.
Exactly, and Donald Trump, David, as well, stone-faced and motionless, as we have seen for so much of this trial. Hardly any reaction from him, almost detached from the proceedings with the occasional head nod. And of course, after this was all over, what we saw every single day, the jury getting up and filing out of the courtroom in that single file line, just inches away from the former president after they had just delivered his fate in their hands, and many of them looking down, Donald Trump watching, many of them looking at the floor.
And Olivia, our team reporting here that as the counts were read, count one guilty, count two guilty, and down the list, that Donald Trump's reaction at one point, he began to shake his head, but then simply stopped as the number of guilty verdicts rendered on multiple counts here continued to grow.
It appeared at count 4 is when he shook his head. It is the reaction we have seen from Donald Trump so many times. Then, of course, before he left the courtroom, David, Donald Trump standing and adjusting his jacket, looking nervously around the room and making his way out for the last time, David.
Olivia Rubin tonight. Olivia, thank you. Let's get right to our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl, tonight. John, the race for president. Folks at home, we've seen this in the polling, have said overwhelmingly that they did not want a Joe Biden-Donald Trump matchup. It is what the country is staring down now as we head toward Election Day. The national polls show this is a 1 or 2 point race. In many of the key battlegrounds, Donald Trump actually ahead of Joe Biden. The question going forward, and pollsters are likely going to ask this right away, is does this conviction change any of the minds of those who have said they would vote for Donald Trump?
And David, pollsters have been asking this question hypothetically, saying if Donald Trump were to be convicted of a crime, if he were to be convicted of a felony, would that change your support for him? The overwhelming majority of Trump supporters have said no, but there have been, on average, in polls, including an ABC News poll just a month ago, 20% of voters who say they would support Donald Trump, who would say that they would at least reconsider their support for Donald Trump if he were to be convicted for a felony. If that holds, that could be devastating to his presidential campaign, again, given how close this is. But will it hold? I mean, we just don't know, David. It's important to remember Trump is now, he was indicted on 4 different venues, 2 federal, 1 state, now this one in New York. And each of those indictments actually only helped his campaign. He actually only improved after being indicted. So we'll see what happens now that an indictment has led to a conviction.
John Karl with us as well. John, thank you. I want to bring in our executive editorial producer, John Santucci, who's covered Donald Trump for many years. And John, you have inside reporting from within the Trump campaign, within the Trump family. It's my understanding it was Eric Trump who was in the courtroom today. Other children have been in the courtroom along the way, but noticeably absent Melania Trump and Ivanka Trump.
Yeah, it's interesting, David. Eric Trump has been by his father's side for much of this case, many of the other cases. But of course, his brother Donald Trump Jr. had also been there earlier in the week. Ivanka and Melania have not been present at any of Donald Trump's court cases or any, of course, of his campaign events for this cycle so far. David, tonight I can tell you with inside the Trump family and inside Trump's inner circle, surprise in 2 ways. Surprised at how quick this verdict came down, but not a lot of surprise, David, in what the verdict ultimately was.
At least at the outset, they know there's a positive to this. They have reported that their site has crashed when it comes to fundraising. But then there's the reality in the weeks to come that they have to run with the former president, now a convicted felon.
David, and actually just moments ago, my colleague Surin Kim and I learning Donald Trump tonight is actually participating in a fundraiser here in New York, so continuing that push. David.
John Santucci with us. John, thank you. Let's get right to our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. Mary, you were on the air with me earlier and reported in real time as it was coming to your iPhone reaction from the Biden campaign. We witnessed, and you have reported many nights here, the president seldomly actually even pointing out that Donald Trump was in the middle of this criminal trial, other than to sort of needle the Trump campaign, saying the former president is busy, I hear, in so many words. I paraphrase. Does that tactic change moving forward?
Well, David, we still have not heard directly from the president himself yet, but his campaign says that today shows that no one is above the law. Look, this verdict, there's no question, it is a political gift to Democrats and the president, but his campaign is being careful not to celebrate this too much. They don't want to be seen as feeding into Trump's narrative that this was all something of a political hit job. That's something that the president adamantly rejects. Instead, tonight, in a somewhat muted statement, the campaign says today's verdict does not change the fact that there is still only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office, at the ballot box, saying convicted felon or not, Trump will be the Republican nominee for president. David.
All right, Mary Bruce with us at the White House. Mary, thank you. Let's bring in our senior congressional correspondent, Rachel Scott, because Rachel, reaction came in very swiftly from Republicans on the Hill, Republican leaders across this country. They are united behind Donald Trump.
United behind the former president, David, after this verdict today. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, calling today a shameful day, calling this a political exercise, not a legal one. Johnson, of course, one of 37 Republican officials that visited that Manhattan courthouse to show their support for the former president. Even Trump's former rivals, including Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who once said that Trump's indictment sucked the oxygen out of the Republican primary, tonight blasting this verdict. The bottom line, David, this is a Republican Party that has only grown more closer to Donald Trump, even after today's guilty verdict, David.
Rachel Scott in Washington. Rachel, thank you. We, of course, will stay on all of the developments after this historic verdict, but there is a lot of other news to get to, including this machete attack in New York's Times Square, the severe storms in multiple states, and a new case of bird flu here in the U.S.
Friday night.
Oh, my God. Somebody has my daughter.
All new 2020 True Crime.
I just remember it was madness.
Has a case we all thought was
I love
solved.
sowing dissent among the people.
Been blown wide open.
Do you think the jury got this one wrong?
Absolutely.
Now, never before seen video of a key witness changing his story.
What does he tell you?
Tells me he made the whole thing up.
The all-new 2020, Friday at 9/8 Central on ABC.
If you were coming of age in the 1980s, the Brat Pack was near the center of your cultural awareness. But for those of us experiencing it from the inside, the Brat Pack was something very different. If you could have the Brat Pack name not exist, would you? I hated the Brat Pack. What a disaster.
Why did we take it as an offense?
Andrew?
I'm not going to say we were the Beatles or anything.
Well, we didn't fill Shea Stadium.
1985? I think we could have.
Get ready, America, every Friday.
The hottest trends, styles, and must-have. What's the right stuff to buy right now? I really love that. It's time to buy the right stuff.
Yes.
And save big time, too.
The right stuff.
Fridays on GMA. You're going to love it.
Why do so many people start their day here?
From ABC News, this is Start Here.
To be in the know and get a different take on the day's top stories. Start here.
Now, that's a part of the story I bet you didn't see coming.
Make it your daily first listen, wherever you get your podcasts.
First thing in the morning.
There's a lot going on.
We're still in a flash flood warning.
To catch you up with what happened overnight, police in riot gear arresting dozens of protesters.
What's happening today? Escalating tensions in the Middle East.
What people are talking about, the migrant crisis.
Fast, straightforward.
With some fun in between.
Check out the Gator on the 17th hole.
The buzzkill in baseball.
First thing in the morning.
America This Morning.
America's #1 early morning news.
On ABC News Live.
But we start here with the other news and a major turn on Ukraine, a major reversal from the White House tonight. The Biden administration giving Ukraine permission now to strike inside parts of Russia with American-made weapons for the first time. Here's Martha Raddatz.
Tonight, with the Russian assault on Ukraine's second-largest city, Kharkiv, intensifying, the Biden administration has made a major reversal, allowing U.S.-supplied weapons to be fired inside Russia. For years, the administration balked at the idea, fearing a strike on Russia itself with U.S.-made weapons could draw the U.S. into direct conflict with Russia. U.S. officials insisting tonight the U.S. weapons will be used only to strike Russian military sites that are being used to launch weapons into Kharkiv. More than a dozen other Western countries have also approved weapons being used inside Russia. But Vladimir Putin already with a threatening response, calling it an escalation, another step towards a serious conflict in Europe and around the globe.
It will be the Pentagon that will coordinate exactly where the weapons can strike inside Russia. But, David, there is no question this is a big change. David?
Martha Raddatz reporting from Washington tonight. Martha, thank you. We turn next tonight to the guilty verdict in the West in a case that made national headlines, the trial of doomsday cult leader Chad Daybell, accused of killing his first wife and then accused of killing his current wife's 2 children. Here's Mola Lengi.
More than 4 years after the murders of his first wife and his girlfriend's children made national headlines, doomsday author Chad Daybell facing his own judgment day.
Guilty.
A jury convicting the Idaho father of conspiring with then-girlfriend Lori Vallow to kill Tammy Daybell and Lori's 2 children, 7-year-old Joshua Vallow and his 16-year-old sister, Tylee. The charred bodies of the kids found in a shallow grave behind Daybell's home.
3 dead bodies. And for what? Money, power, and sex. That's what the defendant cared about.
Lori Daybell is now serving a life sentence. Prosecutors said the couple, who married weeks after the murders, wanted to start a new life and profited from the victims' insurance benefits. Daybell used apocalyptic religious beliefs to justify the murders, claiming the victims had turned into zombies who had to be killed.
Well, Chad Daybell's sentencing hearing begins tomorrow when the judge is expected to hear victim impact statements. Again, David Daybell is facing the death penalty.
All right, Mola Lengi in Los Angeles tonight. Mola, thank you. When we come back here tonight, a harrowing scene in the heart of New York City. A man attacked with a machete in Times Square, packed with tourists.
Machete in Times
also,
Square?
Also, the new case of bird flu here in the U.S. and where it's been discovered tonight. And these severe storms now moving through this evening, multiple states in a moment.
First thing in the morning.
There's a lot going on.
We're still in a flash flood warning.
To catch you up with what happened overnight. Police in riot gear arresting dozens of protesters.
What's happening today? Escalating tensions in the middle.
Let's go to NBC and spam my message. I'm gonna spam my message that they need to pay attention to, which is I got fucked when I entered a courtroom. This guy didn't, despite his 34 felonies, right? So, yep. Live commentary mode on. Only viewers select what they're trying to get some messages. Yeah. So never mind. NBC censors their shit. I don't blame them. So, okay, what else you got? What else you got? You got Fox News. I want to go blow Fox News's minds.
Now, did your client
I'm gonna go make myself a target. Watch me do it live and in real time. Yep, and so yeah, you're done. This is like a video now for them. It's a video now for them. That's unfortunate. Like, so yeah, it's like a video now for them. It's fun. Yeah, so NBC News is where I was hanging out. But I mean, yeah, I guess so. And now look, I've scared away 6,000 people, right? Probably scared them away with my message. I don't care. That's how I choose to believe it. So let's go to CNN News and let's go blow their minds, right? Show me
your energy costs will come down.
Show me a chat. Here I come. Convicted felon on the loose, right? I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna blow their fucking minds. Right? I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna blow their minds every single time for a while. Convicted felon on the loose. You know what I'm saying? Thank you, CNN News, whatever the fuck this is. Convicted felon on the loose. Convicted felon on the loose. Yep. I'm just going to leave. I'm going to go through and I'm going to sow my seed of discord. You saw it first on my channel. If you actually like me, which I don't think you do. You know what I'm saying? But if you actually like me, you can watch me sow my seeds of discord. You're sucking around dick on a fucking video game door. I'm trying to sow dissent among the people. You know what I'm saying? So here we go. And I will. And I'll go hit him with what the reality is, right? Let's go to ABC, NBC. What was I on? I was on ABC. Let's go to NBC. Will you let me chat? No. And NBC silences me. So we'll go back to ABC and listen to what they say.
Right stuff. Yes. And save big time, too. The right stuff. Fridays on GMA. You're going to love it.
Convicted felon on the loose.
To be in the know and get a different take on the day's top stories. Start here.
Now, that's a part of the story that you didn't see coming.
Make it
See, I like dropping my shit, right? Now I'm gonna change my title and get out of the stupid world news stuff, and I'm terribly sorry for doing that to you guys. It's just, you know, it was like entertaining, you know? It was entertaining. Yeah, we go live. Or I'm sorry, you didn't change my title, did you? Oh yeah, okay. So yes, and so gotta go take a look at a reload because I need to know what title I had. I thought I went live with yeah, no, I did go live correctly. Yes. There we go. I went live correctly. Yes. Hi guys, I love you. Soy Boy Leftist attacks me by
Windigoon is very publicly friends with Turkey Tom.
Tom
has
Dark.
been accused of using the N-word multiple times in private conversations, including these screenshots of texts that are alleged to be real.
Yo, shout out, boy.
I'm sorry. I don't think I can do it. Trump guilty on all 34 accounts by Philip DeFranco. I've liked this up to your channel.
Sup, you beautiful bastards. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco show.
I know, right? Okay, when I got the verdict today, I had worked hard in the yard for an hour and a half in the sun to drag 2 pallets of crazy wood that had to be like suspended up into the truck bed. And we had to back the truck up to it, and we had to fucking load the truck bed with the shit that filled the entire dually truck bed. And it took like 3 of us lifting like 3 different fucking crazy boxes. And like I sat in the sun for a while, and I helped my mother move flower pots around and all this other stupid shit. Then I went to town and I bought Taco Bell because my ex-girlfriend has been talking to me about Taco Bell. And I just was like, you know, like enjoying my day, and then they were like verdict, and you can tell. I think Philip was doing the same thing. I think, like, you know, and tomorrow I'll be in the sun for. Tomorrow I'm gonna listen to the world's pundits take a shot at this when I go walking for like 2.5 hours tomorrow.
So you daily dive.
Like I didn't do that today because I had we deep cleaned the house. I deep cleaned the house. I helped deep clean the house. I did all the dishes, all the laundry, all the closet, all the linen, all the problems, all the water, anything that wasn't essentially like tidying up. I pretty much deep cleaned the whole house, and then they did the rest of it.
Into the news. Also,
a friend of the family did the rest of it.
A quick thing: the entire show is not like that.
No, the entire show is not like this, right? We have real lives.
Finished the entire show. In fact, we were uploading it. I was on the middle of a damn hike. I have one.
Yeah, like he's done. He's like done with his life. Yep.
On my phone right now, but the news just broke, and we had to mention it. That former President Donald Trump has
been found. Yeah. Hey, Philip's out on the trail. Fuck yes.
Found guilty on all 34 counts in his hush money trial. So with this being breaking news, more details coming out. I'm going to link to more information in the description down below. We're also obviously going to be talking about this in greater detail on the next show, but
right, this came out of nowhere.
Also got a lot of news we got to talk about today.
We've got to talk about possibly the dumbest man alive exposing himself. Jon Stewart got a UK candidate banned, with him now slamming the Labour.
Jon Stewart got a UK candidate banned. That's awesome.
Mexico's deadly political season just got deadlier, and this is even more. So just buckle up, hit that like.
Oops.
button to let YouTube know you like these big daily dives into the news, and let's jump into it. Starting with, I'd like you to meet one of the dumbest men alive, Corey Harris. Right, because Corey just did the dumbest thing you could do on Zoom that hasn't already been done by Jeffrey Toobin, and that he videoed into a court hearing in Washtenaw County, Michigan, while clearly driving his car.
Mr. Harris, are you driving?
Mr. Harris, are you driving? Are you trying to do a court date while you're driving?
Actually,
I'm pulling it into my doctor's office, actually, so.
Into my doctor's office, actually. So just give me 1 second. I'm parking right now.
Right, and so at first, the judge...
Right, yeah, like, you know...
understandably appears to be a little frustrated.
You stationary?
I'm pulling in right now at this second. Yes, I am.
You know, after a few seconds, it almost seems like he can't help but be entertained by this guy's confidence. But then he starts looking down at his papers, and you see the confusion start to set in. Because the bad news for Corey is that it's not just that he's on his phone while driving, it's a whole legal thing, this is a bad move. Turns out the whole reason that Corey has to be in court at all is for driving on a suspended license. And so as this is happening, Harris's lawyer is asking for the hearing to be adjourned and picked back up in a few weeks, but the judge has already caught on.
Okay. So maybe I don't understand something. This is a driving while license suspended?
That is correct, Your Honor.
And he was just driving.
And he was just driving, so fuck him in the ass. He's done fucked. He's fucked out. I'll speak it in a normal language for you, Judge. Fuck him in the ass. He's fucked. Fuck him in the ass. He's done fucked out.
And
maybe you're not from the South or the Middle West or the Midwest or whatever, right? Maybe you don't understand, but he's done fucked himself in his own ass, and he's done fucked out. And the judge is like, yeah, I've kind of come to that conclusion, but he doesn't know how to say it without sounding ghetto. It's going to sound ghetto when he says it. He's like, yeah, but I mean, like, you should have caught it the second he was on the phone.
And so the judge confirms with the lawyer.
And the judge is like, nope, you're done. I don't want to bust you for driving while with a suspended license, so call me back.
And then there is this long silence with Harris's face just frozen in an expression likely to be immortalized in some sort of meme. And also,
like Pikachu. Oh no, I've been busted.
After a few moments, the judge making this decision.
I don't even know why he would do that. So defendant's bond is revoked in this matter.
Defendant's bond is revoked. The police are coming for you, bitch. Sign into the jail by 6 p.m. You're going to be in there for 6 weeks, something like that. Don't be fucking around driving on a suspended license and all this. Well, I mean, do that, but don't get caught.
He's turned himself into the Washtenaw County.
Don't get caught. You can see the judge. He's like, fuck you. Now I have to make an example out of you. Don't get caught, you fucking moron.
By 6 p.m. today. Failure to turn himself in will result in a bench warrant.
Yeah, you got till 6 p.m. I'll give you a fucking chance. Otherwise, you're a felon right now.
Bond.
Like, you got till 6 p.m. You got to turn yourself in, bitch. You got jail coming at least 2 days. At least 2 days in city. You ever had 2 days in city? I've had 2 days in city like 12 times, 14 times. And this guy's like, fuck, 2 days in city, fuck. We all know what it is. It's 2 days in city, bitch. It's happened to me like 12 times. It's 2 days in city, bitch. Been there a lot. Been there many times. Fucking 2 days in city, bitch. He knows what it is. It's 2 days in city. It's the war on drugs. It's the war on drugs. Shut the fuck up and take the 2 days in city. The judge has spoken. Don't speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. Bye. You done fucked. You're now a fucking fugitive. You can turn yourself in, but stop! Stop! You have violated the law.
Mr. Harris, I'll be giving you a call.
And y'all, I think of myself as someone that's forgetful. But zooming into a court hearing about you driving on a suspended license while you are...
oh, God. Okay, so my ex-girlfriend lied about her name to a cop one time when she was like 31. When I met her, she was 36, I think. And yeah, 5 years had gone by. They had just filed a whole bunch more court dates that she just didn't go to. They just kept pushing and pushing more shit. And they were like, yeah, you violated probation and now you're free and you're free and you're doing drugs, but we don't want to put you in jail because you're free and you're doing drugs and we don't really want to fuck you over in your worst time of your life and all this. And to their credit, I really respect them for this, right? And she was like, oh no, well, so like, you know, and she'd be like, okay, and they'd be like, okay, well, what's your name? And she'd be like, blah, 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 blah. And they'd be like, that's not right. You're fucking going to jail now. And then I would talk to her 7 weeks later. And this is because she was an Alaskan citizen. I have some sympathy for this. She was an Alaskan citizen. I mean, an Alaskan, you know, state, you know, person like Colorado or something like that. She was an Alaskan state girl. As she had moved to Colorado, she false reported to a cop when she was drunk and high. When she was like 20, or no, she was like 29, something like that. And so then they chased her for 2 or 3 years on that. And then they busted her when she came back in, and they were like, okay, we've been after you for 3 years, so we're just going to reset this, and we're going to reset your probation. But you violated probation because you have, you know, opioids in your bloodstream while you violated probation. And they're like, well, any probation that you were on in the first fucking place is violated because you are high, and that's a violation of your probation. And they catch you dirty when they drug test you every week and you're a heroin junkie, but you're trying to hide from them. You're trying to hide from everybody. And I have some respect for the people in my own country who are facing this problem. I have some respect for it, you know? I have some sympathy for it. Like you're facing this problem where you've never had any problem with the cops your whole fucking life. This is how it was for me. Like, you never had any problem with the cops your whole fucking life, and then suddenly you're like public citizen menace number 1, and your family's trying to reach you, and they're like, the cops keep calling us and they're looking for you, and they're like leaning on us, and they're like, we don't want to protect you, and we don't know what you're up to, but it's obviously really bad if the cops are looking at you, so we're going to cut you off until you deal with them. And that's what your family does to you. And that's what her family did to her. And her being a heroin junkie, all she's thinking about is getting money from her family to pay for her next fix anyways. Which honestly, I don't really blame her. I mean, if I was in her situation, that's what I would do as well. You know? It's kind of like when you're in high school and you see a whole bunch of lockers and they're like, okay, it's locker day, pick your locker, and you see 7 ghetto lockers and then a really nice one where some nerd had a locker or something, and you're like, okay, I claim that one, and they're like, okay, well, inside is a textbook and it's 2 years old, but it's got all the answers, like that Harry Potter movie where he's like, you know, the Half-Blood Prince, and he's got like, you know, all the solutions to all the fucking alchemy because the previous class had just suffered through it and just left the notes. So he just stumbles into the book, which is how J.K. Rowling kind of explained how Harry Potter was kind of a autistic boy. He was an autistic boy who didn't really succeed in school that much unless there was some kind of crazy power struggle going on, in which case he excelled really, you know, very well and slaughtered the demon at the first movie, which was like the chess monster or whatever it was. And then, you know, the second movie was like the, you know, Chamber of Secrets, Goblet of Fire. And he just keeps slaying crazy demons that he shouldn't slay. And they're like, well, this guy must have some really crazy thing, but he doesn't really stand out. He's not an amazing alchemist. He's not an amazing Defense Against the Dark Arts guy. He's not an amazing anything. He's just, you know, they're along for the ride and they all seem to really love him. And all he does is try to keep friends with them. And I really liked Harry Potter because it was very autistic. It was a very autistic story where, like, you know, at this point, like, you're so autistic, you're living a lie, and then they call you on it.
actively driving on a suspended license.
And then they call you on it, and you're like, oh, wait, yep, my life's been alive for 6 weeks, but I'm kind of a special person, and I'll live, like my family and my friends, they'll let me live off alive for a while, because I have a lot of credit with them. Every time they need to move, I help them. Every time one of them is in jail, I bail them out. Every time one of them's girlfriend or wife or something like that is hurt, I go and hunt that motherfucker or whatever. Every time one of your friends is raped by a Littleton police officer, you go hunting the motherfucker until you realize that you're not the world's police. You know? Shit like that. Where you're like, okay, well, so now I realize that I've been living a lie, and I've autistically been living a lie, and now I'm driving this car around while you're busting me for driving without a license, and yeah, I'm an autistic person, and I've been trying to get by with all the rules that you set, and I don't want to hurt you, and you don't want to hurt me.
Fucking
and
most insane thing.
It's not the most insane thing I've ever heard, okay? The most insane thing I've ever heard was one time when I went in on my ex-girlfriend's probation, and I'm hungover on heroin, and so is she. And we're coming in, and like we're fucked out on meth and heroin, and we're fucked out, we can't even barely focus on what the fuck's going on. And they roll a whole bunch of shit against her, and I'm the only one there. And I'm listening to all the shit that they're doing to her. And I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. And in the background, you hear some fucking kid cackling to himself on some fucking drugs. And you look back, and there's some kid who has no idea where the fuck he is. He has no idea what the fuck's going on. He has no idea that your girlfriend's life is at stake, essentially, or anything like this. And I remember this. I remember this very fondly. And I was like, this is the company that my court systems keep,
Ever heard. Corey, how?
And so I'm sitting there, and I'll never ever remember the day this happened. There was a bunch of shitty shit that happened. Like, they were after her for false reporting 5 years before. And every time they showed up, she false reported again, because if she didn't, it would be a terrible felony that would prevent her from ever returning home ever. And so I watched her terror between this terrible thing where I would talk to her mother on the phone, and so was she. And her mother's like, my daughter needs $1,500 or she's going to die. And her mother would straight up send $1,500 to her junkie daughter. And I love her mother, and I love her daughter too. And I was like, okay, I get it, and I get it. Like, it's about making her succeed. It's just helping her get through this. It's the mother doesn't care about the money or what it goes to or any of this other stuff. And it's not like it's evil. It was that it doesn't matter. The love is still there. It's unconditional. She needs to show her daughter that the love is unconditional. Now I'm sitting on the sidelines as like essentially the fucking mediator for the people and the cops and the motherfuckers that came after my girlfriend and her family and my family and all the shit going on in my world and my dead best friend and my crew and all the stuff that's going on in the background. And I remember her freaking out because she didn't think she was ever going to see her family again. And I remember me freaking out because one of our inner circle has shot his father in the face and then himself a second later. And what this psychically was going to do for the other 4 members of my crew. And if I would ever speak to them, which I have done, but have not done well. And I've not talked to them since then because it was the destruction of my crew. We were scattered from the mountain. We had it all. We had girlfriends, people, lives, jobs, the family, the houses, the cars, the people, all this shit. And suddenly 2 of us fell to drug addictions. One of us had a deviated septum from cocaine. The other one had 7 drug charges that were all non-felony but were terrible. And another one of us had shot his father and then himself in the head a second later and was now dead. And the other one was a spiritual leader of a commune of about 1,500 people. And I don't enjoy that my life became this kind of crazy struggle. And I don't say these things to diss my friends or say that their struggles mean something less or something more. I'm saying that all of that came at once. I lost my girlfriend. I watched her shoot up AIDS and Hep C right in front of me. Just weeks before, my best friend had, well, not my best friend, but one of my best friends had shot his father and then himself in the head a second later. And that's it. I don't know how else to say it, so I just say it like that. My other friend just descended into drugs like I did, and we looked up to the fucking forefather who had far too much pressure because he was working 2 jobs, he was a spiritual leader, he was running a temple, and he was also like a real estate mogul. And I don't know how to, you know, I don't know how to supply these kind of problems to people who stalk you on Rust, you know? I don't know how to talk to you about real life problems like they matter, about why you should leave me alone. But I mean, this shit doesn't matter to somebody who's just out to get you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them at the time. It didn't matter to them at the time, you know?
How are you still alive? We don't need to send...
Yeah, we're still alive. I tell you all the time, the problems with bad actors, the problems with... okay, so I have a terrible problem with alienating the right in this country. I have a terrible problem with it. I have a terrible problem with saying that the Republican Party doesn't have a front runner. I have a terrible problem with saying that that boat has been cast to adrift. And I have a terrible problem saying that half of our country faced this terrible, terrible, terrible blow to everything that they understand today. I'm about as sympathetic as a fucking liberal gets. You understand? Most of the motherfuckers in the rest of the world are like, ha ha! Like Nelson Muntz. They're like, ha ha! Now you know how it feels, bitch, you know? But I will not say it like that. I will say, I'm sorry that your leaders have fucking forsaken you. I am sorry that they are criminals. I am sorry that we've had nothing but a do-nothing Congress for 50 to 60 years, that I can't name but 2 or 3 policies that were successful. I am sorry that it matters to me so much. I am sorry that I'm walking away right now. I'm sorry I'm walking away right now. I am not represented. Today is where I tell you, you don't get my vote anymore if you're an elephant or a fucking jackass. If you're an elephant or a jackass, you don't get my fucking vote anymore. You understand? I mean, you never had it. One of the parties never had it anyways. But I mean, this
Corey to jail. He needs to be in a room monitored by scientists. This level of stupid needs to be studied, right? And as you probably expect,
this level is stupid. You like to call criminals stupid. I bet you've got a worse story. I bet you've got a worse story.
The internet has been completely ruthless about this man. People finding
the stone that the builder refused shall be the head cornerstone.
it hilarious, unbelievable, all the emotions you're having. people are having. But also, beyond this viral moment, there is the open question of, well, what are the consequences actually going to be? Right? I mean, his defense attorney, for example, told reporters that she strives to live in a world where people are not jailed for nonviolent offenses. Right now, it is unclear what consequences exactly Harris is facing, or whether that would include any jail time. Though in Michigan, for example, the law does say that even for a first-time offense for driving with a suspended license, that can carry a jail sentence of up to 93 days. And then, I mean, for repeat offenders, the jail time can increase up to a year. But yeah, I would love to know your thoughts with this one, whether it be about the jail time or just our guy Corey. And then you got American Airlines flight in the news today, but it's not because like a door suddenly burst open or the plane plummeted 3,000 feet out of nowhere, but instead it's because this flight that was set to go from Phoenix to New York, while just sitting on the tarmac, right, waiting to take off, when all of a sudden a flight attendant selects 8 men and orders them off of the plane.
There was a flight attendant walking down the aisle, and they were plucking people with what seemed at random, telling them that they had to be placed onto another flight.
So you just have to take your belongings, and I was just like, why? She was like, oh, we'll tell you when we get off the plane.
And so they get off and they turn around and they look at each other and they realize, hey, wait a second.
We're all black.
That was crazy. Y'all just took like
We're all black.
8 black people up the plane.
We're all black. Yep, I knew it before he said it.
Right, all 8 of them, black men. They didn't
Yep.
know each other. They weren't seated together, and they said they appeared to be the only black men on the flight. So understandably, they're like, well, what's going on? With the airline staff then explaining that they were removed because of a body odor complaint made by a flight attendant who is a white man. Though none of them were individually singled out, and all of them denied having body odor. Also, the flight attendant didn't just go to the source of the supposed odor and pick whoever the culprit was, as their lawyer explains.
American Airlines representatives walked down the aisle and systematically picked out every black male passenger aboard the flight. They were going into separate rows on different
Oh my God, and white girls testifying. Thank God for her.
sides of the plane.
They were hesitant and
They were like,
okay, like trying to find where the black people were. Like, there's another one. There you go.
So naturally, they're like, okay, what the fuck? This is clearly racist. And you can hear them arguing with the staff in a cell phone video.
So this is discrimination.
Yo, this is insane.
I agree.
Yo, just because of the color of my skin.
Meanwhile, you had the airline insisting that they had to get rebooked on a different flight, but the staff couldn't find one to New York that night. So after about an hour, they let the men return to their seats on the plane, which prompted state...
wow, after an hour, they were like, okay, you can ride the plane.
Stage 2 of the experience, which they called traumatic, upsetting, scary, humiliating, and degrading.
Yeah.
I knew that as soon as I get on that plane, a sea of white faces were going to be looking at me and blaming me for their late flight of an hour.
Had to go back on the plane with everybody looking at us, everybody staring at me.
And so now 3 of them are suing American Airlines for what they say is blatant and egregious race discrimination.
Yep, and these poor guys were completely picked out of nowhere.
One telling the Washington Post,
unfortunately, I'm a black man and I live in America. It wakes you back up to the reality that I can't just go to the store. I can't just do regular things like take a plane home.
Fortunately, I'm a black man and I live in America. It wakes you back up to the reality that I can't just go to the store. I can't just do regular things like take a plane home. And actually, looking into this is not American Airlines' first rodeo, we'll call it. In fact, the NAACP issued
What happened here? Our country used to be really inclusive.
Travel advisory against the company back in 2017 due to several incidents where black people were removed from planes for various reasons. Though notably, the group did lift the warning the following year after the airline made a number of changes, including to its employee training. But yeah, here we are today. And then, in quick entertainment news, this morning, Time released its list of 100 most influential companies, with probably most notably Sam Altman and OpenAI making the cut. Also, you had the WNBA, with Time specifically singling out Caitlin Clark for driving its viewership records to new heights, as well as Selena Gomez's Rare Beauty, a company now valued at $2 billion. And there, Time also noting how much of a focus inclusivity and mental health play in Rare Beauty's business model, and at one point calling that good business, and saying, in a 2023 study of Gen Z and millennial consumers in the US, 80% said that they were more likely to purchase from a brand based on its mission. And adding another 2023 study found that Gen Z wants brands to focus on mental health more than any other issue, including climate. Though they also focused on Rare Beauty products for being relatively affordable compared to other major makeup brands, noting that Rare Beauty sells foundation for $30, whereas Rihanna's Fenty charges $40, and other brands are as high as $90. Then, in other quick news, in the UK, you have reports that homeless people in the capital of Scotland are being shipped out of the city right now, with that reportedly to make way for what's expected to be hundreds of thousands of tourists headed to see Taylor Swift perform next week.
Oh, good. The homeless are being ousted for Swifties.
With that, one shelter in the city saying that several people it supports have been taxied out to surrounding cities. And that, even though it said those people would usually be offered temporary accommodations at places like hotels within the city, which becomes especially notable because legally, Scotland has to offer emergency temporary accommodations to people declared homeless. And on top of that, the capital declared a housing emergency back in November because of record homelessness and soaring rent prices, which is why you have the shelter calling this a blatant injustice that the city is putting its homeless in direct competition with tourists. And its director noting even if they're being accommodated in other cities, a family going through the trauma of homelessness, they shouldn't have to move miles from their job, school, and community to find emergency accommodation. Right, and that argument's not coming out of nowhere, with roughly a third of homeless cases in the country involving kids. And while there's no evidence that homeless people are getting kicked out of places that they're already staying, the opposite of this is not great, with many now asking Taylor Swift either to do something or criticizing her for not speaking out on the situation. Though also, like we talked about yesterday, that's not the
Taylor Swift is doing fine.
The only thing that her fans have been trying to get her to speak on. And then we've got to talk about this insanely messy situation involving the UK Labour Party, Jon Stewart, and the allegations of anti-Semitism. Because yesterday, the news broke that the Labour Party had banned a left-wing academic by the name of Faiza Shaheen, with them specifically banning her from standing as a candidate in the upcoming election over tweets that she liked that some members considered objectionable. With this including one tweet in particular that the Jewish labor movement had complained about that read, "Every time you say something even mildly critical of Israel, you're immediately assailed by scores of hysterical people who explain to you why you're completely wrong, how you're biased against Israel. Moreover, you can't easily ignore them because those are not just random people. They tend to be friends or people who move in the same..."
Yep. But I mean, if you look at the Jewish people, they have a valid complaint. They have a valid complaint here.
Same circles as you. Those people are mobilized by professional organizations. But when that tweet was flagged and read aloud by a BBC host in an interview with Shaheen, she responded by explaining,
"I don't remember liking this tweet. I was looking as a... If you see that tweet, it was a retweet of a Jon Stewart sketch. I watched the Jon Stewart sketch, but I wouldn't have even ordinarily liked that. Honestly, it was the middle of the night. If you look at the timing, I was probably with the baby breastfeeding.
And according to reports, the Jon Stewart clip in question was actually one from way back in 2014. And there, Stewart does a bit where he's trying to talk about an Israeli ground offensive happening at the time. You know, every time he says the word Israel, he gets yelled at by 4 of the show's correspondents.
We'll start tonight in the Middle East, where Israel... What? Israel isn't supposed to defend itself?
Oh yeah, if Mexico bombed Texas, will we exercise
What other country is held to the same standard as Israel?
People that want to destroy our terrorism? What is the matter with you? It's the only democracy in the Middle East, you
self-hating Jew?
Right, and there, Stewart hits on the fact that even Jews like himself, they get slammed for criticizing Israel or called self-hating, which many Jewish people actually find anti-Semitic because it draws from the dual loyalty trope that a Jewish person's true allegiance is only to Israel. So it ends up being kind of ironic that this is what Shaheen is getting in trouble over, which is something even Jon Stewart himself noted, retweeting a post on X that shared the video and writing, "This is the dumbest thing the UK has done since electing Boris Johnson. What the actual fuck?" Though there, I also want to quickly note here that the post that he retweeted did get a community note clarifying that she had liked a post about the clip, not the clip itself. But to that point, we did see Shaheen telling BBC that she did understand that the tweet she had liked was wrong.
I know what's wrong with it, of course.
What is wrong with it?
The line that's there about the they're in professional organizations, it plays into a trope, and I absolutely don't agree with that, and I'm sorry about that.
But they're also going on to say that this was just one tweet that she liked, arguing that her actions in her community and for Jewish constituents should be more important, going on to complain about double standards in the Labour Party. And actually, to that point, we saw Shaheen doubling down on those claims again today, with her announcing that she'll be challenging the Labour Party's decision and accusing it of launching, quote, a systemic campaign of racism, Islamophobia, and bullying, further claiming that the party has a palpable problem with black and brown people. But for now, that's where we are, and we're gonna have to wait to see how this whole mess plays out, especially with the snap election just around the corner on July 4th. And then, when it comes to my wife and my kids, I want to do everything I can to protect them. And when it comes to our home, I feel so much better after installing Simply Safe, who also, wouldn't you know it, happens to be today's fantastic sponsor of the show. So big thanks to them. But Simply Safe is comprehensive security for the whole home, with advanced sensors and cameras to detect threats from break-ins to fires, floods, and more. Your home is professionally monitored 24/7. If anything happens, Simply Safe's expert agents act within 5 seconds of receiving an alarm signal and take immediate steps to ensure your family's safety. With Smart Alarm Indoor Camera, these agents can even see and speak to intruders in real time, stopping them in their tracks. And it's these types of features that help me sleep at night, as well as when we're on vacation. And for those of you with teenagers, this helps monitor them as well. You know, in like the next month or so, this set's changing, stuff's happening. One of the first things I think about ever since someone literally broke into my set while I was filming that time years ago is safety, is security, and not having to stress about that, knowing I have this It's amazing. I mean, that's less than half the cost of traditional security systems with no long-term contracts or hidden fees. And it's easy to install yourself, or they have professionals that can do it for you. So yeah, go to simplysafe.com/YouTube and save 20% on your system. And your first month is free when you sign up for Fast Protect monitoring. Because y'all, there's no safe like SimpliSafe. And then, in the least shocking news today, Samuel Alito has officially refused to recuse himself in 2 January 6th related cases after it was revealed that different flags associated with Stop the Steal had been flown outside of his houses. Or as others put it, Samuel Alito has decided that Samuel Alito is sufficiently impartial. Because as I talked about last week, Alito had been facing sweeping calls to remove himself from the cases, one of which centers on Trump's immunity, with all this coming after the New York Times reported 2 separate incidents, both of which involved different flags tied to the effort to overturn the election and featured prominently at the insurrection. The first being an upside-down American flag, which has long been a sign of distress, particularly in the military, but more recently has been reclaimed as a symbol of Stop the Steal, with that one notably being flown outside his Virginia home in the days after the insurrection. While then the second flag was an Appeal to Heaven flag flown at Alito's Long Beach Island home last summer. While that flag dates back to the Revolutionary War, it's also evolved more recently, becoming a symbol that's been embraced by Christian nationalists who support creating a more Christian government. And all of this should be important because Supreme Court justices are required to avoid any kind of political statements or displays, especially on topics that come before the court, as is the case here. But in a letter to lawmakers declining to recuse himself, he took the Shaggy defense, saying, "It wasn't me. My wife, Martha Ann, she put up those flags," saying she was, quote, "fond of flying flags and flew them often," claiming he didn't even notice the upside-down flag at first, and when he did, he asked his wife to remove it, but she refused for several days. And as far as why she did it, he said that she was greatly distressed at the time due in large part to a very nasty neighborhood dispute, and claiming a house on the street displayed a sign attacking her personally, and a man who was living in the house at the time trailed her all the way down the street and berated her in my presence using foul language, including what I regard as the vilest epithet that can be addressed to a woman. But, very notably here, neighbors and police reports directly contradicted Alito's timeline of events. Right? Alito himself had previously said that the dispute between his wife and neighbors arose after they displayed anti-Trump signs on their lawn, with him telling Fox News that the situation escalated after an argument where one of the residents began calling her derogatory language, including the C word, or saying that specific incident left her so distraught she decided to hang the inverted flag as a statement. But a call to police indicated that the incident involving bad language that actually took place on February 15th, weeks after the upside-down flag was flown and taken down. Also, significantly here, that call wasn't made by Martha Ann, but by the neighbors who said that she had been harassing them. And then beyond that, another thing that's super notable about this is what it omits. With the Times reporting, Justice Alito's letter did not dispute that the upside-down flag conveyed support for the Stop the Steal movement. Right? And that really stands out because he does explicitly claim that neither he nor his wife knew the Appeal to Heaven flag, that had a connection to the Stop the Steal movement, writing that his wife may have mentioned the flag's history in the American Revolution, but adding that he, quote, assumed she was flying it to express a patriotic and religious message, arguing that she didn't fly to associate with Stop the Steal or any other group, making a clear effort to distance himself from his wife's efforts here, saying they owned the home jointly, so she has the legal right to use it as she sees fit, going on to say that she is a private citizen who has the same First Amendment rights as everyone else, and concluding he won't recuse himself because a reasonable person who is not motivated by political or ideological considerations or a desire to affect the outcome of Supreme Court cases would conclude this event does not meet the applicable standard for recusal. Though on that front, many experts disagree, like Amanda Frost, for example, a law professor at the University of Virginia, saying, "I agree that Justice Alito's wife has a First Amendment right to express her views, but if she does so on their shared property in a way that would lead a reasonable person to question his impartiality, then he should respond by recusing himself." And with that, her giving another hypothetical example here, explaining, "I would say the same if Justice Ginsburg's husband had placed a Gore 1 sign on the lawn of their shared home while the Bush-Gore election was being contested in the court. But that is ultimately where we are with this, and it's exactly how I said this was going to play out. And that doesn't make me the smartest man in the room. That makes me just not the dumbest. Because I really do think that you've either not been paying attention or, like, you're not tethered to reality if you thought this was going to play out any other way. Or when personal accountability is, like, the only thing to rein something in the highest halls of power, what do you fucking think is going to happen? And then... See, The IRS has totally failed to crack down on ultra-wealthy Americans who have
Sorry
used
about that.
tax breaks
I
in
got
Puerto
a phone
Rico to
call.
evade paying potentially billions of dollars in taxes. That's what just got revealed by this IRS whistleblower who wrote a letter obtained by the New York Times, as well as interviews with agency officials. Because back in 2012, Puerto Rico enacted a number of tax breaks aimed at encouraging wealthy Americans and corporations to move to the island in order to help revitalize its economy. And while 100% has been successful in drawing in tons of rich people to become residents of the territory, it has also long been alleged that the tax breaks enable millionaires to just avoid paying what they owe in taxes. So you have the situation where tax breaks meant to help the Puerto Rican economy are just being exploited by the ultra-rich to pad their own pockets. But also the big key thing is all while costing the islands billions of dollars in tax revenue and driving up housing costs for locals who are pushed out of their homes by rich foreigners moving to the island en masse and buying up properties. Right? We're not talking about like a little light tax evasion here. Senator Ron Wyden, the chair of the Senate
Oops. Now what happened?
Finance
There we
Committee
go.
told the Times that people are potentially evading billions of dollars in taxes. And specifically, there have long been concerns about a particular tax break for people who make big profits selling off investments while they're residing in Puerto Rico. For example, you have the Times saying, if a wealthy investor buys a big stake in a business in 2013, moves to Puerto Rico in 2020, and then sells their stake for a fat profit in 2023, they're exempt from paying federal taxes on the 3 years of profits they made on the island. But, big key thing here, they are still required to pay the federal government for the first 7 years of profits they made while still residing on the U.S. mainland. With all that being subject to capital gains taxes, right? Think about probably nearly 25% of profits. So that becomes a ton of money when we're talking about big investments. They could owe the feds millions and millions of dollars. But you have tax advisors saying that some investors are claiming that all of the profits from their investments, that they're exempt from taxes, right? Notably including the money that they made while living on the mainland that should be taxed. Which is why about 3 years ago, the IRS said, hey, we're gonna do something about this. And the agency launching a campaign to crack down on possible abuses. But the whistleblower letter says that they have absolutely failed to do basically anything at all, with them saying that less than 20 people have been contacted as part of the IRS campaign, which is less than 1% of the people who received the tax break. And also adding, my understanding is that no assessments have been made by any office nationwide for a campaign that has been open for 3 years. This is completely absurd in light of the amount of tax dollars at issue. And that's also been backed by others, with another tax lawyer telling the Times that he told the IRS about dozens of possible examples, but none of the people he flagged got audited. With also multiple tax advisors who specialize in disputes with the IRS also saying they haven't seen many signs that the agency is doing anything, actually. Now that said, as far as how the IRS has responded, the agency's commissioner argued that the enforcement campaign is moving slow because it's still in its early chapters, claiming that dozens of taxpayers have actually already been audited. But then another IRS official refuted that, saying the number was closer to 20, seemingly backing up the whistleblower claims. And what's more, another official also said that no taxes have actually been collected yet. In fact, the situation is so bad now that Senate officials are now investigating the whistleblower's accusations. But as far as what happens here, we'll have to wait and see, and in the meantime, you will probably be paying more in taxes than a lot of people that should be paying their fair share. And then, in huge international news, Mexico's political campaign season is coming to a bloody end. With just yesterday, a gunman shooting and killing an aspiring mayor at a rally in the southern state of Guerrero, where the candidate's name was Jose Alfredo Cabrera, and the attack was actually captured on camera, with the footage showing him smiling and surrounded by supporters in the moments right before he was shot. And according to officials, the suspected attacker was also killed at the scene, while there were 3 people also injured and 2 others detained. And as we've talked about before, this is unfortunately not unusual. Mexico's cartels have targeted and killed candidates from all of the country's major parties, with Alfredo Cabrera's murder bringing the number of candidates killed this election season to at least 23, with some advocacy groups reporting that the real number is over 30. I mean, a day before Alfredo Cabrera's murder, for example, a mayoral candidate in the central state of Morelos was murdered, while another one was wounded by gunfire in western Jalisco state. And just last week, 9 people were killed in 2 attacks against mayoral candidates in the southern state of Chiapas. But with all that said, we shouldn't let the violence distract us from the fact that this election is still taking place, and it is a historic one. In fact, it's actually the biggest election in the country's history. When voters head to the polls in a few days, more than 20,000 congressional and local positions are going to be up for grabs. And more than that, it's expected to deliver the country's first female president. But with whoever wins, tackling cartel violence will be among the major challenges they face. Right on top of the political candidates killed this year, more than 450,000 people have been murdered and tens of thousands have gone
450,000 people
missing in Mexico since 2006. And with that, the front runner this year is a woman by the name of Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo. They're currently enjoying a sizable lead at the poll with 53% of voter support, with her also being the candidate backed by the current president, AMLO. And to that point, she's pledged to continue his social programs and strategy of tackling crime at its roots, but a controversial policy that he calls hugs, not bullets, with an example of that policy being offering apprenticeships to encourage youths to not join drug cartels. And this is there's a sizable...
Yeah, please.
gap to the next leading candidate.
There's better stuff out there. There's pretty much everything is better than that.
Pulling in at 36%.
If you choose to be a baker, you'll do better than that.
The name of Xochitl Galvez Ruiz, a woman who has said that with AMLO's strategy, the hugs have been for criminals and the bullets for citizens. And at that point, cartels and other criminal groups in Mexico have reportedly gained greater control over more territory in the country under AMLO's leadership. Though notably, at the same time, we've seen violence escalate in the past when former Mexican presidents have deployed the army against cartels, which is why you have many saying there are no easy solutions here. It should also be noted that AMLO has faced other criticisms as well, with many claiming that his policies have eroded Mexican democracy and brought the country closer to authoritarianism. Though despite that, he remains incredibly popular there, with many arguing that his support for Shane Bompardo that virtually guarantees her victory. But this also, as her supporters have said, that she is not a puppet of AMLO. Right in there, pointing to the fact that her policies often diverged from his when she was serving as the first female mayor of Mexico City. But as far as what this election is going to fully look like, we'll see soon. And in the meantime, if you're watching from Mexico or you have family or friends there, I'd especially love to know your thoughts on this. And then finally, today we've got community updates and commentary. For community updates, it actually starts with a massive thank you. Right, thank you to everyone that's made this beautiful bastard drop this week so huge. And also, for those of you that haven't gotten in on it yet, definitely get it. There are a number of things that are sold out, or there are a lot of sizes that are sold out, with the color 3-packs definitely being the winner, which absolutely makes sense. So much love and time was spent making these perfect. I've gotten like the most positive emails about them since we did the first drop. So if you want to snag the last few in your size, which by the way we go from small to 5XL, definitely recommend going to the site. And we still have some left of the Embrace Change Zip hoodie, beautiful bastard angel of death, have a great fucking day, emotionally exhausted here. But then, as far as commentary, man, the comments were almost exclusively about that Louisiana story yesterday. And I mean, understandably so. With some of y'all like Rachel Hansen saying, as an atheist and a teacher, it is insulting that legislatures want schools to post religious texts. I would strongly consider civil disobedience to these laws that go against my own free speech. But you had some like Grace saying, leave it up. Look at bigger posters of all the other religions, including Satanism. Tobo saying, religious lawmakers said the quiet part out loud. They want to abolish the separation of church and state. Bebop saying, the degradation of separation of church and state is scary. I don't need someone else to validate my beliefs by forcing them on someone else. I hope and pray we get these entitled politicians out before they completely destroy the US. So there you had some responding saying, it's not about validating religious belief, it's about control. And RWG saying, I live in Louisiana. We rank the worst in almost every metric that matters compared to other states: education, healthcare, obesity, crime rate, etc. Our state needs to pay teachers, invest in healthcare, invest in childcare and youth. This bill is a stupid waste of time and money that'll have no real benefit for any school children, and it is a clear violation of separation of church and state. But adding, unfortunately, I'm not surprised. This is par for the course in Louisiana. But then finally, today to end on a light note, a lot of people just said, hey, great job to the editors for that final joke, which I'll tell you, they got me, because when they cut the audio out of me doing my outro, I about had a fucking heart attack. And so I'll have to ask them how much it was about you guys laughing versus how much just fucking with me they were going for. I feel like it was probably 50-50, 60-40. But with that said, that's where your Thursday evening, Friday morning show is going to end. But I'll see you soon, because remember, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you right back. Fully appreciate it. For example, a new virtual
name.
I'm gonna start
Sup,
over.
you beautiful bastards. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. This is your Wednesday evening, Thursday morning dive into the news. And we honestly just have so much to talk about, so I'm gonna hit you with that monkey and just jump into it.
This is a news show.
So P. Diddy is back in the news today, which of course is bad news for Diddy, but also the specifics here are wild. Because right now there's a grand jury in New York hearing from his victims, as well as there now being a massive investigation by the Rolling Stone that alleges that he actually has a much longer history of abuse than the recent claims would suggest. Now, to start with the grand jury out of New York, there's not a ton to say there yet, though we do know that they're hearing from people who have sued Diddy for abuse, although we don't know if they're hearing from all 8 people who have brought lawsuits against him. But one thing that it definitely shows is that the government is ramping up its pressure on Diddy. Because a grand jury, it's one of the first hurdles they need to clear before they can bring formal charges against him. Although really, it's not much of a bar. There's an old legal saying that you can convince a grand jury to bring charges against anything since the bar is so low. But more interesting, at least today, is the news from Rolling Stone, which conducted a 6-month investigation into Combs and spoke with a ton of people from his past. And because I see my job is trying to make everything consumable, I'm not going to go into every single detail here. You can click the link down below to go into the full thing. But we're going to touch on some of it and know that it details a long history of anger and and violence from Diddy. With, for example, colleagues telling Rolling Stone that back in 1994, they had to pull Diddy off a woman at their offices because they could hear him beating her. While in another incident, Diddy almost got into another altercation with another woman before being restrained. Then in 2000, he allegedly beat the shit out of a fellow music executive in a hotel room because he had a relationship with Diddy's ex. In 2001, he sexually harassed a freelance graphic designer who was at a party he was throwing to celebrate his acquittal in a shooting trial. Fortunately, that time it didn't escalate to complete physical violence as the woman managed to slide away, but not before Diddy was allegedly a real creep by massaging her shoulders and saying things like, "Oh yeah, you like that? No, you like that." But one of the worst allegations came from his time at Howard University, and, at that time he had a reputation for hosting crazy parties. Things got brought up, like an incident where he showed up at a woman's dorm and he was screaming for a girlfriend and acting belligerent, with multiple people telling the outlet roughly the same story. One alleged witness saying he screamed and hollered and acted a stone fool until she came downstairs. And then, when his girlfriend finally went downstairs, he began beating her and was screaming at the top of his lungs, and that he whooped her butt, like really whooped her butt, with then other women from the dorm intervening before the attack eventually stopped. And during this investigation, the Rolling Stones spoke with about 50 people connected to Diddy in his past, and they found that some suggested that he was like this due to abandonment issues. And so sometimes it was so bad that he wouldn't let the women in his life move on, like when he and J-Lo broke up. He apparently had his staff stand outside MTV's TRL studios with signs to win her back. Though clearly that did not work there, and it also seems to have escalated from there because later on, exes like Cassie Ventura, or the one whose beating was caught on camera in a hotel, she said that Diddy would have his cronies hunt her down and pressure her to come back. But sometimes that pressure including things like threatening to not release her music. And all of that lining up with statements made by his ex Kim Porter, who said that in the past Diddy would call her 50 to 60 times a day. And a lot of these new allegations, such as the Howard University incident, they'd probably be interesting for prosecutors who might want to speak to witnesses or the victims. And not because they could use it to bring more charges since they're past the statute of limitations in most cases, but because it can still help their case. Though notably, there's a small problem there, because in many of these cases, the victims themselves didn't want to talk to Rolling Stone. And then even when they would speak, in other cases, witnesses spoke on the condition of anonymity, right? Either because they didn't want the spotlight or they feared repercussions. But, with all that said, the big thing that just, I think it's hard not to wonder is how many victims are there? Because we now have the video of one beating, and we hear all these other situations of him just acting like a maniac. And you just can't help but wonder how many other skeletons are in his closet. If he's just been like this, how much has he swept under the rug over his lifetime? And then, all eyes on Rafah. That is the message that more than 37 million people have shared online since those devastating Israeli strikes on Rafah that we covered on Monday. With those strikes seeming to be the catalyst for a number of A-list celebrities now directly speaking out. Though this, of course, after all the criticism we've seen around celebrities and silence and even perceived silence to the strikes. And so now we're also seeing many more asking, does them speaking on it really make a meaningful difference? If so, how much? All of this playing out as we're seeing specifics like Jenna Ortega and Ariana Grande yesterday sharing this link to the Palestine Children's Relief Fund in their Instagram stories. Also before that, it had been posted by Bridgerton actress Nicola Coughlin around 5 days ago. And in that time, it managed to raise roughly $176,000, which notably was more than double the $85,000 that her last campaign with medical aid for Palestinians made. But notably now, just a day after Ariana and Jenna spotlighted the Children's Relief Fund, it jumped past the $1 million mark, with Jenna also doubling down on support for Palestine in several more stories in a post where she said, masses debating over a ceasefire while thousands upon thousands of children continue being slaughtered. Where is the humanity? And while both Ariana and Jenna signed the Artists for Ceasefire petition months ago, you have many saying this is the most blatant support that they have shown on their social media, right? And they're definitely not the only ones. For example, you had Dua Lipa recently saying in a story on Instagram, burning children alive can never be justified. The whole world is mobilizing to stop the Israeli genocide. And so with that, we've seen a lot of support for these three, some saying things like, it is important to recognize how severe of an impact one story post can have, and no celebrity is going to stop the war, yes, but their voices impact thousands to help those in need. After Ari posted the donation link, there was a surge in the amount. This is how it works. So with that, you had many saying, there was one star that's notably silent here, right? With many pointing the finger at Taylor Swift. But that in part because her fans have made that known, with Swifties or Palestine becoming the #1 trending topic in the US on X this morning. And many there encouraging people attending her Eras tour to bring posters demanding action and for her to speak out. Also penning a letter titled Speak Now, Taylor, and saying, your voice has the ability to impact and draw attention to crucial problems affecting millions of people worldwide. Right, citing Rafah and then adding, your smallest action could make a significant difference in amplifying these pleas for pressing for real change. And many fans reiterating that this isn't about stopping the war. Right, people do not want Taylor to speak up to single-handedly stop the genocide. People want Taylor to utilize her 400 million plus followers social media platforms to raise awareness to the uneducated, encourage people to donate to help Palestinians evacuate to safety, with many also citing a post from Paramore, which is opening for her, where they urge people to donate to Doctors Without Borders. But with all that, where I want to end this is about what we're actually seeing in Rafah right now. Because this morning, the New York Times reporting that the bombs that were used in the strike, they were made in the U.S. And this also, notably, as the White House has said that the strike, it didn't cross Biden's red line in supporting Israel. And this is Israel has continued to enter the city, sending tanks on raids just today. But of course, all of this is developing in real time, and as we have been, we'll keep our eyes on this as all of it continues. And then, massive business and gaming news. Let's talk about League of Legends. Because you got a ton of gamers right now shouting $500 for what at Riot Games after they announced a new event and package to commemorate one of the game's most successful players. And that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks as part of its Hall of Legends, which is essentially a League Hall of Fame alongside an in-game battle pass to commemorate this year's winner, Faker. But this next part is where things go off the rails. Because on top of that, Riot's also recognizing Faker's skills with a unique skin for Ahri, his most iconic character. Or technically, it's a series of bundles that range in price from like $43 to $450, and Faker gets 30% of the revenue. So the cheapest version is a slightly altered version of Ahri, while the more expensive versions have unique animations, and the most expensive version not only includes all of that, but also special skins for 4 other characters and a ton of other perks. But all anyone is really focused on is the $500 version, because it seems insane. Lots of people doubting its value and saying 400 to 500 euro for in-game cosmetics? Man, Riot milking Faker's name. Faker is literally the only person with so much pull to sell this. Crazy marketing. League is a free game, lol. Whereas others have reacted by vowing to automatically ban Ahri in every game they have so that people who bought the skin won't be able to use it. And also one of the biggest ironies of all this is that Faker himself doesn't even use in-game skins. Right? In his entire career, he apparently has only ever used a unique skin once, and it was due to a misclick. You know, with this, we've also seen creators like Asmongold react to the situation. With them noticing how League was pretty clever on Twitter to hide how negative the reaction's been.
Oh, this is smart. This is real smart. So what League of Legends is doing is they're replying to tweets that are positive. That way, nobody can see the popular tweets that are negative, that are below this.
Meanwhile, others have mocked the effort put into this entire package, pointing out that it looks really similar to ones done by Dota 2, which is League's biggest competitor. That game had an entire red, gold, white, black aesthetic as part of its International 2016 Battle Pass. And ever since then, it's had a series of items every year called Crimson Witnesses, which are given to players who attended the International. And ironically, these can go for well beyond what the Faker skin costs. But a likely difference is that skins in Dota rarely exceed $35. If they go beyond that, there are technically ways to get them in-game, or it's because they're a random item from a $2.50 pack and players can sell or buy them on Steam for Steam credit. With all that said, you know, I want to know what you think. Do you get the outrage? Are you against it? You know, because for me, as an outsider looking in, I'm like, I get being annoyed by it and even mocking it, but as long as, you know, it doesn't offer in-game power, which these don't, I personally don't care. There are always going to be whales out there ready to be milked. I mean, if anything, I wouldn't buy them because I'd be embarrassed, because if you have that skin, you're saying, yes, I don't care about money. I make poor financial decisions. That's what this skin says about me. Which also, I will say, the movement to ban the character from any game, hilarious. Troll the whales, why not? But hey, people in the community, people out of the community, I'd love to know your thoughts. And then, so I gotta admit, this is one of my favorite segments of the PDS, and it's in part because y'all have such an eclectic taste in entertainment, from Disney on Ice to comedy shows in Vegas. And our weekly SeatGeek $500 giveaway lives on, and you beautiful bastards are crushing it. Because as you probably know by now, SeatGeek is the #1 rated live event ticketing app with over 28 million downloads and access to a wide array of entertainment to get you and a loved one out of the house. And my team just worked with SeatGeek to extend the $500 weekly giveaway, and entering honestly couldn't be easier. You just simply add code PDS to your SeatGeek account, get $10 off, and you could be one of our lucky weekly winners. That's $500 in credit towards any of SeatGeek's 70,000 events. And if you're new to SeatGeek, you can also add code PHIL for $20 off your first purchase. And SeatGeek veterans can add code PDS, which gets you $10 off any purchase. And again, you'll be entered for your chance at the $500 SeatGeek credit, no purchase necessary. Plus, if you're interested in a chance to win $1,000 SeatGeek credit, Daily Dip newsletter subscribers can earn double entry and double winning. So keep up with the PDS in your inbox and subscribe right now. And then pretty much every sport in America has some sort of racist past. It's just a matter of like how horrible or weird was it. You know, whether it be just not allowing certain races to play at the highest levels, or my favorite is that the NCAA actually banned dunking in basketball for a while. Right, largely because people were like, oh my God, those tall black men are dunking on our white boys. Like, it's literally part of the reason Kareem Abdul-Jabbar perfected his skyhook. Because a bunch of baby-brained assholes that jerk off to the idea of segregation were like, that's not not the beautiful game I know. But we're not talking about basketball today. Instead, we're talking about baseball. Because now some 75 years after the sport's desegregation, Major League Baseball is finally correcting its racist past, with the organization now including games from the so-called Negro Leagues in its official records. And so what that means is in total, you've got 7 professional Negro Leagues comprised of 2,300 black and Latino players from 1920 to 1948. Many of whom, by the way, have long been considered among the greatest of all time by fans, with 35 players actually eventually entering the Hall of Fame. And all of that, of course, going back to the historic moment when Jackie Robinson crossed the color line in 1947 by playing for the Brooklyn Dodgers in a Major League game. And so then, as more non-white players followed him, the Negro Leagues disappeared. But for decades, their history was either ignored or they were treated as separate from the history of regular baseball. But interestingly, after the murder of George Floyd, the MLB recognized the Negro Leagues as having Major League status. Though notably, their stats weren't actually integrated with the existing MLB records, though that is until now. Which means that because of this data being added back in, we're going to see black players knocking down white legends like Babe Ruth and Ted Williams from their pedestals. With Josh Gibson, for example, taking the career slugging percentage and other records from Ruth, as well as the career batting average record from Ty Cobb. And others like pitcher Satchel Paige, center fielder Cool Papa Bell, and slugger Cristobal Torriente are expected to surpass white players on the leaderboards as well. And with all this, we saw the president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum telling WGN News.
But the likes of Monty Irvin and Larry Doby, who spent a little bit more time in the Negro Leagues, their numbers will grow substantially. Jackie Robinson will get a few more hits added to his hit total. But you'll also see names like Bill Greason, who is still with us. He'll be 100 years young this year. Willie Mays picks up, well, yeah, he will. He'll pick up a few more hits because he was there in 1948.
With these updated stats, there are only one way that black history is now being fully appreciated. For example, a new virtual reality game called Barnstormers lets you play in the Negro Leagues alongside the legends that we've been talking about. Also, MLB The Show on PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch recently unveiled a Negro Leagues game mode. And you've also got a new documentary about the history, as well as replica jerseys and caps from the era becoming increasingly popular. And as one might expect, the reactions to this have been mixed. To just use one post from the MLB on X as an example, you saw drastically different popular reactions to this side by side. Right, some saying not a fan of this, we understand they weren't allowed to play and that sucks, but they didn't account these stats in the majors and it shouldn't count towards MLB records. But this, right next to, great move by MLB. You can't accurately portray the history of baseball without including these players in their stats. Some of the best players ever in the sport who were sadly denied the opportunity at the time. Long overdue. But then finally, others landing in the middle saying, this is something I don't know how to feel about. Like, I understand how there were super talented players in the Negro Leagues, but now Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth records are just erased without being broken per se. Josh Gibson was obviously a great player and well-deserved. It just seems like we're wiping out guys who earned the records in the league. Granted, I also realize that Josh Gibson wasn't given the opportunity to play in the MLB, and that is obviously wrong. However, no one today has control of changing that. Just paradoxical is all. Right? And seemingly, a lot of the people that are torn on this are going, okay, the people that, had the records, obviously there's an argument to be had of they wouldn't have necessarily those records if other people of different races were allowed to play. But also the people that weren't allowed into the league, they weren't going against the caliber of player at the time that was allowed into the league. But personally, I'll say I don't care about the records being updated. I mean, honestly, I don't think many of those guys would have records like they had if they were going against the caliber of player that's out there now. Like, I don't know how Babe Ruth's faring against Mariano Rivera. So I guess part of that's just to say you end up in this infinite number of what-if arguments. All while the only thing we 100% know for sure is that you had numerous high caliber players that weren't allowed into the league because of the color of their skin. And we'll never really know how either side would have done if they were integrated at that time. There's no clean, clear, easy way to, accommodate for that. This is arguably the closest thing to that. But that's also my opinion. So whether you agree, you disagree, I'd love to hear from you in those comments down below. And then, so let's talk about it. Louisiana is set to become the first state to require the 10 Commandments to be posted in public schools. Or perhaps more accurately, I should say, Louisiana is set to become the first state to test whether the ultra-conservative Supreme Court will allow for explicitly Christian displays in public schools. Right? And that's because yesterday, the Louisiana State House passed a bill requiring the 10 Commandments to be printed on a poster no smaller than 11 inches by 14 inches and displayed in every single classroom in every single school and college that receives public funding. Because the legislation's already been approved by the state Senate, it just needs a sign off by the Republican governor, though even if he vetoed it, Republicans who broadly voted in favor of the bill, they have a veto-proof majority. But notably, even when it does become a law, it's unclear if it'll be enforced because it's all but certain that it's going to face lawsuits immediately, or with numerous civil rights groups like the ACLU, as well as Democrats who oppose the measure, arguing that it is a blatant violation of the First Amendment. Because, it explicitly prohibits the government from establishing a religion under the Establishment Clause. Or with many saying this is basic separation of church and state 101. But that, as supporters of the bill believe that it'll stand up to the legal challenges, with them arguing that the 10 Commandments have historical significance and they helped form the U.S. legal system. The bill's sponsor, State Representative Dodie Horton, arguing the 10 Commandments are the basis of all laws in Louisiana. She also later went on to shoot herself in the foot in regards to the whole the government can't establish a religion. religion thing, saying, I'm not concerned with an atheist, I'm not concerned with a Muslim, I'm concerned with our children looking and seeing what God's law is. She's not really proving the point that she thinks she is. But, very importantly here, it doesn't seem like she thinks that she needs to have a particularly good case. Because in remarks on the House floor ahead of the vote on her bill, Horton spoke about the ultra-conservative Supreme Court and argued that the landscape has changed. They're specifically pointing to the landmark 2022 Supreme Court ruling Kennedy v. Bremerton School District, which is where the justices ruled that a former public school football coach had the right to pray at the 50-yard line after games. Right, and that decision was absolutely massive because it signaled that the court's conservatives embraced a much looser interpretation of the First Amendment's Establishment Clause, which effectively overturned nearly 50 years of precedent. And since then, many Republican lawmakers in red states have been proposing and even enacting legislation to test the limits of everything. In fact, just in the last year or so, we've seen Republicans floating similar bills to display the 10 Commandments at schools in Texas, Utah, Arizona, and Oklahoma. And actually, Texas last year enacted a law allowing school districts to hire chaplains. And they're not alone. At least 13 other states have introduced similar bills this past legislative session. And then we should talk about recent developments that could dramatically impact Ukraine's ability to fight back against Russia. And specifically, I'm talking about the mounting pressure we're seeing the US face from NATO and European allies to allow Ukraine to use Western weapons to attack military targets inside Russia. Because as we've talked about, the US, as well as allies like Germany and Italy, they've so far only sent long-range weapons to Ukraine on the condition that they not be used across the border, right? Because there's this genuine fear that it could escalate the conflict, especially because Putin has repeatedly warned that the West's direct involvement, it could put the world on a path to nuclear conflict. But at the same time, it is without a doubt a huge disadvantage for Ukrainian forces. And in fact, some have blamed that specifically for the success of Russia's ongoing offensive in the Kharkiv region, with the deputy head of Ukraine's National Security, Defense, and Intelligence Committee telling Newsweek, we had information before the latest Russian offensive near Kharkiv about them assembling their troops, about their equipment, but we couldn't do anything. We couldn't strike, and that's why we couldn't prevent this attack. That's why we lost some villages, some territories, and we lost our soldiers and civilians. This is ridiculous. And I mean, to that point, a Russian strike killed 18 people in a Kharkiv megastore just yesterday. And according to Zelensky, Russia's dropped more than 3,000 guided aerial bombs on Ukraine this month alone. And saying in a New York Times interview, their ability to strike from a distance is such because they are stationed in the villages nearest to the border of Ukraine with Russia. They strike from there knowing that we will not return fire. And adding that they proceed calmly, understanding that our partners do not give us permission. So what's really standing out is that Ukraine's allies do seem to be coming around to what Zelensky's saying, or because they are becoming increasingly worried about Russia's advances in Kharkiv. I mean, this week, for example, we saw the NATO Parliamentary Assembly adopting a declaration urging allied governments to, quote, support Ukraine in its international right to defend itself by lifting some restrictions on the use weapons provided by NATO allies to strike legitimate targets in Russia. With that, we saw French President Macron and German Chancellor Scholz having said that Ukraine should be able to strike targets inside Russia. And that coming just weeks after British Foreign Secretary David Cameron also said Ukraine should decide how to best use the weapons. Though also with that, Macron emphasized that only Russian bases used to launch missiles against Ukraine should be regarded as legitimate targets, right? Not other Russian bases or civilian infrastructure. But this also, as Macron has said, that Western countries shouldn't roll out sending troops to Ukraine. And there, we've also seen France now signing an agreement with Ukraine to send military instructors to the country. And with all this, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Spain, Finland, and Poland have also expressed their backing for Ukraine to attack Russian targets. And so basically, this has left Joe Biden there all alone. And this is even Secretary of State Antony Blinken is reportedly among those pushing Biden to loosen the restrictions on weapons sent to Ukraine. And that, as bipartisan representatives have also asked the DoD in a letter to lift the embargo, arguing Ukrainians have been unable to defend themselves due to the administration's current policy. But of course, all of this as the threat of escalation remains real. I mean, Putin even responded to this shift in European aid to Ukraine with a message for the US saying, this unending escalation can lead to serious consequences. If Europe were to face those serious consequences, what will the United States do considering our strategic arms parity? So, you know, just some fun, light, international news. And then we've got more news that we're going to touch on in a minute, but we got to pay some bills and thank the fantastic sponsor of today's show, Prize Picks. Because there's always action on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, and this is the perfect time to join with the basketball playoffs happening and the finals around the corner. You know, I've been getting deep into Prize Picks, a skill-based fantasy game where it's you against the numbers. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, adjust your entry based on the potential payout displayed, and watch the winnings roll in when right. Type in the name of your player, and if you want to, since you can find players' stats from their last 5 games and averages during that span. You know, I make picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. And this week, I'm picking Kyrie Irving more than 23.5 points, Anthony Edwards more than 14.5 rebounds and assists, and Luka more than 3.5 3-pointers made. You know, Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America with something for everyone. Basketball, hockey, League of Legends, and everything in between. And Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. So get in on the action, download the app today, and use code DeFranco for a first deposit match of up to $100. Just click that link use code DeFranco, pick more, pick less, it's that easy. And then, it's time we talk about one of the most consequential elections of 2024, an election that has the potential to shape the balance of power between the US and its adversaries, that has the power to make or break efforts to protect the environment and fight climate change, and it's actually not the US election, or actually an election taking place in any one country. Instead, I'm talking about the election for the Secretary General of the International Seabed Authority. The International Seabed Authority, or ISA, is an intergovernmental body created as a result of the United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea, or UNCLOS. See, it's in charge of setting rules for deep-sea mining in international waters. And in July, 168 member states, along with the European Union, will decide on its next leader. Now, the current one, a man by the name of Michael Lodge, has criticized environmental opposition to deep-sea mining and has been criticized himself for cozying up to the contractors the ISA regulates. And his opposition is Brazilian oceanographer, diplomat, and environmental advocate Leticia Carvalho. And so with how different these two candidates are, the outcome could have significant economic and environmental consequences. Right? And that's because, you might not know, the ocean floor is chock full of cobalt, nickel, and other minerals that are essential to green and renewable energy technologies, as well as having many defense and aerospace applications. And so, the ISA is responsible for handing out contracts for exploration and mining these minerals. It's a big deal. In fact, the Secretary General is the one who personally negotiates the terms of confidential contracts with mining companies. And beyond that, the ISA is still in the process of finalizing the rules and regulations for deep-sea mining, including environmental protections. But also, here's the big kicker. The United States, the most powerful country on Earth, doesn't get a say in any of it. Or the U.S. actually only has observer status at the meetings where these regulations are being discussed. The U.S. can't sponsor companies for licenses to explore potential undersea mineral deposits, and it doesn't even get a vote on who the next Secretary General is. And all of that is because the U.S. hasn't ratified UNCLOS and is therefore not a member of the ISA. In fact, UNCLOS has never even been voted on by the full Senate. But the U.S.'s adversaries, on the other hand, are party to the treaty and have taken full advantage. With seabed mining potentially starting as early as next year, and China in particular is in place to dominate. And with China already having a near monopoly on critical materials found on land, there are fears that the U.S. could end up even more dependent on China, and this would threaten national security, which is why the concerns go way beyond mining, with many warning that China is taking advantage of America's absence from the treaty to pursue overall naval supremacy, which is why there's been a massive push for the U.S. to get on board with UNCLOS. I mean, this year, for example, hundreds of former national security, military, and political leaders sent a letter to the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations urging lawmakers to ratify the treaty. And notably, these people include former national security advisors, intelligence leaders, 50 admirals of the Navy and Coast Guard, more than 70 generals from other branches of the military, and nearly 200 U.S. ambassadors. And in that letter, they noted that in the decade since that committee had last considered UNCLOS ratification, China and Russia have taken advantage of America's absence to work actively to undermine critical United States economic and national security interests. And with that, specifically emphasizing the rights of access to deep seabed mine sites containing trillions of dollars worth of strategic minerals that are, quote, critical for both United States security dominance as well as the transition to a greener 21st century. With John Bellinger, a former advisor to George W. Bush, supporting the letter and telling CBS, the United States probably has got the most to gain of any country in the world if it were party to the Law of the Sea Convention. And conversely, we actually probably have the most to lose by not being part of it. And a really key thing to note here is that it's actually a very small group of people keeping the U.S. out. Treaty ratification in the U.S. requires the support of 2/3 of the country's senators. So in 2012, for example, the last time the Senate held hearings on the treaty, just 34 Republicans promising to oppose the measure meant that it never even came to a vote. And that, despite the ratification reportedly having the support of the president, the intelligence community, big oil, major business groups, and the U.S. military. With this, we see opponents of ratification saying there's nothing in UNCLOS that advances America's interests. With Utah Senator Mike Lee, for example, telling CBS, the U.S. needs to reject the constant impulse to cede sovereignty by allowing unelected and unaccountable global bureaucrats to regulate away new frontiers. Ratification today would be a win for the climate lobby and the global elites who feel entitled to govern from the shadows. But to be very clear with that, we are talking about participating in an agreement on how to share resources and territories belonging to no one. This has nothing to do with the land or waters that the U.S. has sovereignty over. Notably with that, UNCLOS declared the seabed to be common heritage of humankind, and it specifically requires royalties and other benefits from deep-sea mining to be shared among ISA member nations, with preference given to developing countries, which is some sort of an effort to make up for colonialism. But in any case, UNCLOS opponents also argue that American companies aren't investing in deep-sea mining because it's not economically viable. Though to that point, Lockheed Martin's holding on to its rights to 2 Pacific seabed sites just in case the treaty does ever pass. And the company telling telling 60 Minutes that it can't begin operations if the U.S. doesn't ratify the treaty. And actually, with that, there are clear signs that U.S. interest in deep-sea mining is growing, with, interestingly enough, Republicans often leading the charge there. Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski, for example, has been among those leading the push for ratification. Also, in its most recent defense budget, Congress included a provision that requires the Pentagon to issue a report on the nation's capacity to process seabed minerals. And then also this year, Republican lawmakers have introduced the responsible use of seafloor Act of 2024, which would notably require the federal government to support domestic seabed minerals processing. And that brings me to the next key point with all this, because the most responsible use of seafloor resources may actually be to just leave them there. Supporters of deep-sea mining claim that it would be far less damaging than mining on land. And they argue that it is necessary to fight climate change because it'll allow us to get the metals needed to make electric car batteries, wind turbines, and other green technologies. But that, as environmentalists say, that it would wreak destruction on marine ecosystems. In particular, warning that deep-sea mining could potentially lead to extensive and likely irreversible biodiversity loss and potentially make climate change even worse. At the very least, a 2022 peer-reviewed study found no or next to no scientific knowledge to enable evidence-based management. Or in other words, basically concluding that the effective regulation of deep-sea mining is not even possible with the information that we have now. And to that point, in March, Denmark became the 25th ISA member nation to call for a pause or a moratorium on mining due to a lack of scientific knowledge about seafloor ecosystems. And I should also note that beyond the environmental aspect, opponents of deep-sea mining have voiced alarm about how much this issue is being tied to national security concerns and competition between great powers. With, for example, Greenpeace writing, as if it was not enough to plan to destroy fragile ecosystems, some deep-sea mining companies are now marketing deep-sea minerals as necessary to strengthen military power, exacerbating geopolitical tensions between world superpowers with worrying implications for global peace and stability. And so at the end of the day, there is a lot of debate about this industry. And so the election we're talking about for this summer, as well as the other ongoing negotiations to finalize regulations, they may very well determine what the future of this industry is. And for good or for bad, without ratifying UNCLOS, the U.S. just doesn't have much of a say here. Which is why in the meantime, I gotta pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts with everything we just talked about here? And then finally today we have commentary where we dive into the comments on the last show and see what y'all had to say, and largely there were two main reactions. One, a large number of you were clowning on me yesterday, and two, people were like, kids? There's no world where I'm having kids. Or, which makes sense. One of the first stories yesterday was about that. Let's call them possibly problematic pronatalists. With Chris saying a child in this economy? To which Ryan Cool said, kids aren't that expensive. That's anti-kid propaganda. And then pretty much everyone was like, what do you mean anti-kid propaganda? Kids are expensive. To which, yeah, I have to co-sign. Kids are expensive. There's a range of how expensive, depending on a number of life decisions, but still expensive. For how annoying dinks are that make it their entire personality, there is an argument there of like, you're able to do so much more in life if you don't have kids. And while I love my boys and they fill my life with so much joy and I would have never made a different decision, like I understand why people have different feelings on this. Especially as you have people like Grace Lovely saying, America, have more babies now. Also America, better wages, enough time off, affordable health care. No, why should the government have to take care of your children? And then also you had folks like Carlos specifically talking about the couple in that story, saying that couple looks like a downright pair of sociopaths if I've ever seen some. Which I will say, part of me goes like, you never want to judge a book by its cover, but sometimes you judge a book by its cover when the person that made the book spent so much time on that cover. Like, there is part of me that wants to know how much time they dedicated to thinking, what kind of glasses should we both wear? How do we make ourselves look like a caricature of people that think that they're very smart and better than? Like, they look like another casting option for like Get Out. But then finally today, and for this section, people clowning on me, because yesterday featured this moment. But also, of course, there's the financial stress of a car, as this girl in New York explained today. She makes some valid points, some calling it an extremely gripping statement. Gamer Girl saying, damn, that girl had some solid takes on car culture. I'm about as speechless as she was. The silence, she speaks volumes. At 28 minutes, she makes a really good point. It's like no one hears us when we're speaking. Which one, turned out there was a random export glitch. It wasn't a copyright problem or anything. It was just, you know, sometimes when you release a 33-minute video, you accidentally miss a 10-second mess up. But we also got a comment from Aaliyah in Progress saying, I was the girl from New York in the Today Show interview. I talked about having a car and getting classes is an unnecessary cost with student loans and rent. But then she also added, the interview also edited me out talking about the US need for high-speed rail and walkable communities. Also, updates, I got my license in March, job paid for classes, still no car. Which if all true, I love that for you. Or you got the ability to drive when needed, but you don't have that weight of a car loan on you. Though again, just the idea of having a car in New York sounds like a nightmare. But that is actually where today's Wednesday evening, Thursday morning show is going to end, especially because especially because I got to get a head start on tomorrow's show. But with that said, you're not going to have to miss me for long, because remember, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow for more news.
Warp drive active. Warp drive active. Warp drive active. Docking request accepted.
I won't play EVE Online for a long time. Probably another year. I'll let my subs lapse. One of them's up in like 2 months, and the other one's up in like 3. I'll just let the skill training go. If I can't travel if I can't travel in a shuttle in high sec without losing a billion ISK, I'm gonna fucking quit the game. Fuck them. Same as Mortal. You want to be fucking loser developers and make that possible? Not in 18 years it wasn't possible, but it is now. They let the losers win. And so goodbye EVE Online for a long time. And I'm dead serious. Goodbye EVE Online. I don't like feeling demoralized by pieces of fucking worthless shit. I don't like it. I'll just say it. You know? I mean, maybe they want the world to be like that because they're worthless pieces of cocksucking shit. But, you know, I'm gonna stop now. I had a bad loss there for traveling in high sec in a shuttle. I won't play EVE Online for a while here, 6 months to a year, something like that. If I can't travel in high sec in a shuttle, what's the fucking point of EVE Online? I'll just leave. If I can't travel in high sec in a shuttle, you're gonna lose a customer. I would make a big deal with it, but I know CCP doesn't care. So, you know, I know that it's a hard world, and I lost today. I lost a billion ISK. What can I say? Okay, guys. Trump lost. Losers dead. Bye, Republican Party. It was a good day. I love you guys. Have a wonderful day. This session was recorded